I now call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice to the public the time, date, place, and the agenda for this meeting was published on February the 2nd, 2016 in the Aiken Standard as a legal notice. Notice to contiguous property owners were mailed, signs were posted on the properties by February 3rd, 2016. Notice of this meeting was sent to the city clerk and to the city webpage to be posted on the Finance and Administration Building Notice Board and the Municipal Building Notice Board by February 19th, 2016. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to all interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board knowingly providing false information that's according to Section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. Each infraction is a separate offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. Any person that wishes to have a conversation with the board, we ask that you please use the podium directly in front of the board. Please speak into the recording devices so that your conversations with the board can be properly recorded. Anyone that wish to have a copy of tonight's proceedings, you may contact the planning department. Please state your name and your address to the board. The first item on the agenda, we have our meeting schedule for 2016. Are there any corrections or additions? The chair would entertain a motion.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I recommend that we approve the minutes of November 24th, 2015.
Meeting schedules.
Excuse me?
The meeting schedules. not-
Oh, I thought that was first.
I'm-
Okay, minutes. No. Okay, I move that we do. I've already checked them out, and they look great. Thank you. No mind. Moving on.
Second.
Bud, second. The meeting schedule for 2016 is approved.
Now.
Now, since we have not met in a couple of months, we have the meeting minutes from the November meeting. The chair would entertain motions if there's any corrections or additions.
Now I move that we approve the meetings of November 24th, 2015.
I'll second the motion with one correction, Mr. Chair. Page 3, fifth paragraph,
Oh, she's got one.
third sentence. The word should be based, not base.
That's already been taken care of.
Has it?
Yes,
Okay,
has.
thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other corrections? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by a raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. Since this is the first meeting, as the first item of new business, we have the election of officers. The floor is now open for the election of the chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Pat?
I cannot picture going forward without, other than the capable leadership of our current chairman. I'd like to nominate Larry Ogletree for another term as chairman.
I second. Okay.
Are there any other nominations?
You hope.
Seeing here none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion carried unanimously. The floor is now open for the election of vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I would nominate Ms. Judy Turner. She has so aptly served in the
Thank you.
past for many years,
Thank you.
and I think she's done an outstanding job. And so we'll just reward you with more work. How's that?
I second that.
John second. Any other nominations? Seeing here none. Those in favor of the motion, the nomination, raise your right hand.
Do I raise my hand?
Yes. The motion is carried unanimously. The floor is now open for the election of secretary.
Mr. Chair, I recommend that I nominate Mike Jordan as temporary interim planning director to serve until a final choice has been made.
Second.
Bud second. Any other nominations? The nomination is closed. Those in favor of Mike Jordan being the interim, the motion is carried unanimously. Continuing new business, I call your attention to application 16-92004. That's a request for a special exception to allow 2 horses at 607 Collington Avenue Southeast and 339 Horry Street Southeast in their zone RS 15. I might take a chair prerogative, and we are going to hear application 16-93007. That's a variance request to allow horses to be stable and otherwise kept in the area on the same premises. That's at 607 Collington Avenue. However, I will require separate motions, but the discussion will be pertaining to both applications. Both applications will require separate motions. To the city. Has this been properly posted?
Yes, sir, it has.
Were there any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
With the circumstances the way they are with Tommy Paradise leaving, I've not had the opportunity to talk with anybody about this application,
Other than the
other than what's
additional- that was
actually in
passed
the application package.
Right. Are you prepared to give us a briefing about the application?
No, sir.
No. All right, so the staff has read the board has read the staff packages. We'll go into any questions to the city. from
I
the
have one
board.
question to the city that you might be able to answer. The lot on Horry Street is, written in the application is 339. My observations was that's also the address of another property just south of there, between there and the corner on Colleton. So I'm a little confused which is 339.
Sir, 339 is my address, the vacant lot beside me, I don't know that it has an address.
Sir, just a minute. I may call you to the way that this meeting is conducted.
I just didn't want to get involved in any of this, because it's not my error.
I guess we have an indication that 339 is not the correct address for the lot on Horry that's part of this application.
All right, the staff report needs to be
Okay, we'll have
corrected.
to clarify that then.
I did have conversation with some staff in the planning, and it's my understanding the GIS is incorrect with an address. The right property has been posted for this application, but there is, in our GIS, there's an incorrect address.
Okay, and we don't know what the correct address is?
No, sir.
Maybe the applicant will? No? But it is a separate address, it is a separate lot.
We can defer that question to the applicant.
Okay, because,
That I'm not positive.
okay, that was part of my confusion because it's also indicated that the plan is to subdivide it,
Yes, sir.
which confused me that it already have a separate address if it's,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Other questions to the city? Thanks, Mike. Representative for the Lauren and Petrie Bososen, the representative.
Good afternoon. My name is Carl McMillan. I'm the registered agent for the owners of 607 Colleton. I'm not a lawyer. I am a friend of theirs. I also am an Aiken resident and an Aiken business owner. I have a prepared statement, but before I go into that, just to clarify the ORI address, the GIS mapping did have 2 tax map numbers on that parcel. Mr. Paradise found a plat where it had been combined, so it would need to be re-subdivided. So at this point, I'm not sure there is a street address. There is some confusion there. But this application would have the Ori Street lot excluded from this, and the reason for that was since horses had never been involved with that, that would have added another variance request. So that's why it was modified, and we came back to this, we extended it and modified our application. So hopefully
There is a separate tax number for that lot currently?
There is, but it's my understanding that that's an error with the county because there is a plat that has them as one parcel. But in the conclusion, in the notes, obviously that the platting would have to be redone, and that lot would be a separate parcel that's not part of the variance action that we're seeking this evening. But it would also not be involved in the paddocks or any of the things that would be associated with the equestrian use that we're requesting.
Okay, if necessary, we'll have to find some other way of identifying it.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So in terms of the second application, are you not considering that this evening, or you are going to wait until you modify and combine the lots?
Well, it's all, the combination of we don't need a variance to subdivide the property. So I'm just saying that would have been a third request if we had included that property in because it never had horses involved.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Continue on your embellishment.
I'm here tonight to help preserve one of Aiken's original winter colony estates and support the goals of the comprehensive land use plan of the city of Aiken. Rosewall, which is the name of the winter colony estate at 607 Colleton, was built in 1892 and flourished through the golden era of Aiken winter colonies. The 1.1 acre property with the 6-stall barn and close proximity to Hitchcock Woods thrived through the early mid-19th century with horses. Unlike many requests presented to the planning board in relation to stabling, this request is not to build a new structure in the historic district, but to restore an existing structure to its original use. I understand there are both proponents and opponents of the variance here tonight. I've read through the staff comments as well as the letters from neighboring property owners. I'd like to address the legitimate concerns of both. What I won't comment on is the number of immaterial topics brought up in these letters, including the owner's marital status, the number of homes they own, and how much time they plan to spend in Aiken. Because if stable marital status and permanent residency were prerequisites for living here, Aiken would not be a very big town. I would, however, like to quickly address the disapproving comments neighbors have made regarding recent renovations to the property. I'd like to make it clear that all work to date has been permitted and approved by the appropriate city departments. So that leads us to the issue at hand, which is the impact of allowing 2 horses at Rosewall. With its acreage and a barn that is still in pristine condition to this day, this is a logical path for the homeowner that this estate to take with this estate. As stated, the previous owner of the property sought variances to return horses to Rosewall in the mid-'80s, but were denied. It is important to note, however, that in the 1980s, the comprehensive land plan was not in place, nor the Old Aiken master plan that includes zoning ordinance for the care and maintenance of horses within the city limits. 2 of the goals of the comprehensive plan, which I'll quote, is to encourage preservation and rehabilitation of homes and buildings that contribute to character of the area, and to preserve older buildings when possible. With the comprehensive land plan and Old Aiken master plan now in place, the staff acknowledges in their notes in the application that, and I quote, if horses are maintained in accordance with the zoning ordinance, impact to the adjacent property may not be affected. Staff did ask for additional information on manure removal and trailer storage. The existing ingress and egress on Sumter and Colleton allow sufficient room for trailers and manure wagons to be stored inside the gates of the property, thus alleviating any concerns regarding traffic flow and visibility from Colleton and Sumter. Manure removal and the 2 small paddocks that would need to be constructed would fall under the existing guidelines of the zoning ordinance regarding care and maintenance of horses in the city. As far as the neighbors concerned, directly relating to allowing 2 horses on the property, the majority boil down to odor, noise, and nuisance, in so many words. Again, as noted in the staff comments in the memorandum, if the horses are maintained in accordance with the zoning ordinances, impact to the adjacent property owners may not be affected. Given that the zoning ordinance is in place, these issues are a moot point. The other primary concern from the neighbors is the road use. From this location, horses would be mainly transported via trailer. When not being transported by trailer, as is the case with the existing barns listed in Exhibit C, which you have in your package, which shows the other properties along Colleton that have existing barns today. These people that have the horses there can easily navigate now down the roads and the green spaces to the equestrian path where South Boundary and Marion meet, as that extension is for horses only and it ties into the horse district. It has been used for many years by the people that have horses on that side of South Boundary to get to Hitchcock Woods and also to the polo fields and the dirt roads along Grace Avenue and Tunage. Furthermore, in accordance with Section 3.2.21C5 of the zoning ordinance, horses must be stabled and otherwise kept in areas on the premises that are no closer to the dwelling, building, accessory buildings, and recreational structures on adjoining lots than they are to the dwelling on the premise. That is the reason for the variance request this evening. Given these parameters, there is only one adjacent property that stands to be affected by the actual variance request, and that is 334 Sumter Street. No other property in the vicinity of 607 Colleton would be affected if the horses are maintained in accordance with the zoning ordinance, per the staff comments earlier. Photos have been provided by the daughter of the owner of 334 Sumter Street, which are a bit misleading. So I'd like to clarify a few points. The apartment, which she claims to be affected by the noise of the horses, as their apartment is 2 feet from the edge of the barn structure, is actually the tack room and the apartment. That's what it adjoins. The actual stables themselves, the 6 stalls, back up to the outdoor seating area, which is a pavilion that is also in your packet there with pictures if you need to take a look. But just to clarify, there's not rattling buckets 2 foot outside the door of the residential unit. It is further back in an area that's just a patio. The owner's daughter has also provided photos of 248 Marion Street, which is one of the other equestrian properties on the corner of Marion and Colleton, which coexist with a barn on the property line in proximity to the neighbor's property. The photos that she took were the back side of the property. I have with me, and I'll pass these up to you if that's okay. I've taken a couple of photos that actually put the barn in context to the adjoining property. I believe the owners of the Marion Street property are here tonight. I'm going to pass these up to you. Also in here is petitions signed by 70 Aiken residents, the majority of whom live in the historic district or in the horse district, who are in support of this application. With Mr. Paradise being gone, I didn't even get this package until Friday afternoon. We didn't have time to get our stuff submitted, but they have their names, addresses, telephone numbers, and then also the pictures here as well.
Will you pass those on to Mr. Jordan, and then he'll have to mark them
Yes.
as an exhibit?
And I also have attached a copy of my notes here as well.
Do we have questions from the board to Mr. McCormick?
I have several questions, Mr.
Pat?
Chairman.
I'm almost finished, and then I can take the questions. There's one other clarification that I'd like to make on the application and the conclusion, and this is something that I have never really seen, that they've requested that the variance not passed with the property, that the variance is only good for the present owners. The present owners are willing and encouraged to place deed restrictions and our conservation easements on this property to if the horse use is allowed, so that it can protect the integrity of the stable and ensure that at no point in the future would this 1.1 acre property be subdivided if the equestrian variance is exercised. So nobody had ever said anything to me about this, and I saw the conclusions on Friday. Did not have a chance to get in touch with Mr. Paradise. I guess he's no longer with you. So we would certainly like to clarify that not only would we want this variance to pass with the property, they would also go one step further in putting a deed restriction in place that the property could not be subdivided any further, as long as they could keep the horses there on that property. So that's the only, in the application and the comments, I believe I've addressed all the comments that staff had noted. If not, I'd certainly be happy to now and would be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. McCormick,
McMillan.
Macmillan, I'm
Yes.
sorry. In your opening statements, let me give one major correction. We are hearing a special exception for the horses. The variance is on the distance from the structures to the neighboring property and the property lines.
Thank you. I stand corrected. And as I said, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just trying to get the facts out for what we're trying to do here. So thanks for your correction.
Pat?
Yeah, and also just to comment on your last point, it's not unusual for us where we grant a variance or a special exception for it not to be to run with the land. In other words, ad infinitum, that we limit it to the presence and ownership of the existing applicant. It's not an unusual thing, especially since we might be approving it for the applicant's specific request as far as use. So I just mentioned that to you.
Well, I guess to clarify on our behalf, if they went forward to do that, the deed restriction and conservation easement has some tax consequence to them, so there is some importance to having it passed with title. So that's just one of the clarifications, and obviously that's at your discretion, but that's what we would be looking for.
Well, that's entirely beyond our consideration.
Well,
And
you
in fact,
can say it can pass with it
I
or
hope
not.
what we're not saying is, gosh, this place won't be subdivided if you approve our variance and special application, but it might be subdivided if you don't approve.
Well, I mean, just to be
mean,
very
it's-
clear and very honest, it very well could, because obviously if the stable cannot be used to house horses, it has to be converted to some use that it can be used for. So I don't know the plans or what they would want to do in the future with it, but obviously right now, putting it under a conservation easement as a historic property is their intent, and that's why we would ask to have the variance passed with the property, or at least the property would have the deed restriction placed on it that the horses would remain and it would stay intact. So I would ask that the board I'm not sure whether it's reconsider or take into account that we are in disagreement with the staff conclusion.
Well, let me
in that
just
list.
make this clear. It's not a consideration that we would appreciate having to make, that the owners might do something else with the land if we don't approve their application. Let me proceed on with some questions I have. The intention is to subdivide the Horry property, let's just call it the Horry property, do you mind?
Yes, sir.
Okay, whether or not this application is approved or not.
That's correct, because
Okay.
as you look at the map, it really has no flow or form with the other property.
Okay, another question, just to clarify what you said, responding to the letters that were received, the changes in the gates, walls, and other things that the letters comment on were all approved by planning and the design review board?
Yes, sir.
That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One other point of comment. Your emphasis on the ordinance and the fact that this is all consistent with the ordinance. The ordinance says that this property is RS 15. RS properties in these entire blocks, except for across the street up by Marion. There is no horse use by right. Horse use and properties that are greater than 1 acre can only be approved by special exception at the discretion of this board. And it's only where we're fully convinced that it meets the criteria. So your emphasis that this is all consistent with the ordinance is not exactly correct.
Well, it's consistent with the pieces and part I picked out of it,
It
so
may
obviously
be
we all
approved
had.
by special
And
exception.
I'm here
It's not by
to
right.
make it as positive as I
just
can,
wanted you to
so I certainly understand that.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah, I do. Mr. McMillan, can we get a map of the plot up by chance?
Which one is it? Maybe that would help her get it.
Which one are you looking,
is
you
it?
want to see all the properties with the horses, or just the,
Just that one right there, I don't know how to.
that's the plat, which
Yeah.
the county does not have proper reference to.
There you go.
Right.
So you can show me the subdivision line that you're proposing?
Yeah, that's it, Paul.
It comes out to, I believe it's, I don't hold me to these numbers, it's roughly between 3/10 and 4/10 of an acre, and that would leave, well, if you do the math right here, it's 1.1 is what would be left. So that would mean 3.367 would be the acreage here.
Okay, so describe to me where the turnout area for these horses would be primarily?
Two small paddocks in front of the barn that are behind the garden. Actually, there's a photograph of the garden. Well, right here, this is from there's a fountain in the center of the garden here. These are the back two quadrants of the garden, and the two paths would be here. This is the pool, and the other lots on this side. So you're talking about two small paddocks that would be irrigated so that there's no dust, and they would be, maintained per the ordinance every day as the stalls would be.
Yeah, that obviously would be the concern on a lot that small, trying to maintain a couple, that's just, you're just gonna have obviously a couple dirt.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, they would obviously end up being dirt paddocks, and they would have to be watered, and they'd have to be drug. And one thing I didn't, there are several of the property owners that have the horse properties are here tonight as well, so, they could certainly address the care and maintenance of how they take care of it. But there is a aggressive ordinance in place and a committee that comes by to be sure that these properties are being cared for properly, and that the manure removal is being done and the paddocks are being cleaned.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McMillan, you pointed to the area where the proposed paddocks are going to be, but would it be one paddock, two paddocks?
One on
three?
each side of the walkway. Yeah, where he's got the arrow on one side and one on that side. It's just, with two horses, it's just, and that's also easier to maintain and rotate. It could be that they'll be big enough that you would only use one or the other, and there might be a possibility during the summer that you could get grass back in them. But, through the winter months here, and obviously that's usually when the horses are here, it's hard to keep grass in those. But you would have two for rotation and for also to keep them separate if they needed to be.
Just order of magnitude size of each paddock. Just off the top of my head, maybe 60 by 60. Not a, they don't need a lot. These horses that would be, over the years, horses that are kept in town are worked. So they don't need turnout for exercise. They get their exercise doing something else. So if they need recreation or turnout
they're sent somewhere else to be turned out. It's just the nature of the downtown facilities. The horses that are kept there are not for rehab, and they're not to be petted. They're usually in some sort of work or training, and so they don't need the big space and the big turnout. It's mainly just for them to get out, roll, and stretch their legs.
I have a question. The swimming pool, do you plan to put a fence around the swimming pool or leave it open as it is now?
Well, I believe, with the lot being subdivided in the back, if they don't put a fence up there, then we're going to have to, for liability reasons, obviously, if it's open, they'd have to put a fence up. I don't think there would be in my mind, if you got horses running around, you need to have a fence around the pool. You got kids, you need fence around a pool. If that's one of the criteria of the application, then certainly that would be fine. But yeah, I think there would have to be some consideration in the quartering and off the pool.
I was simply
if you
thinking
put
of the safety of the horses themselves.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
That,
there are several of us who are current or past horse owners and have had horses at home. We're familiar too here in Aiken with the maintenance of sport horses, but I assume these are not race horses. What is the use the owners plan?
Would more than likely be fox hunters or
Okay,
eventers.
And they're of course not hunting every day, and.
Well, during hunt season, you usually give them a day. Yeah, that's the
Well, I
day off that
suppose
they're
you
in the
could-
paddock.
You
Yes,
could
sir.
shop around and find some place to hunt every day.
Yes, sir. Might need more than two, but yes, sir.
And that's the intention of the owners,
Yes, sir.
to hunt as many days as possible?
We hunt, trail ride in Hitchcock Woods. I mean, a definitive use for what the horses are going to be that are going to be in the barn, I'm not prepared to tell you, but
Well,
I just think.
I wish we could
fair
speak to
maintenance
the
of
applicants.
I'm sorry?
I said I wish we could speak to the applicants, and I'd like to become familiar with what their intentions are. Do they plan to hack over to the woods to hunt
Absolutely.
across South Boundary?
As
over to
the
Grace or?
Yeah, as the other farms do now that are on Marion and Colleton. And they go if you go to the end of Marion Street where it dead ends into South Boundary, that access is the access to get to the dirt roads to get to the woods, and it's been used as long as I can remember.
So they'd hack over to Marion, down Marion to Grace, and over to the woods?
Yes, sir.
And that's what they do if they'd intend to hunt?
Yes, sir. And that's what the existing stables do here as well now on Colleton and Marion.
The paddocks they plan to put in, and you said 2 paddocks, I assume this is going to necessitate the removal of the present garden with the brick and the...
No, sir, it would be on each side of the brick garden and the hedge. I don't see that we would be doing anything in the way to disrupt or change anything. Maybe one or two of the camellias might have to come out, but we're not changing any. They would be divided on each side of the grass strip.
That's awful small paddocks.
Well,
I guess I'm used to
yes, sir. Well,
more spacious,
well, and I live at the corner of Grace and Marlboro, and I mean we have large paddocks and we have small paddocks, so it's
okay, two small paddocks then. And their use of the barn is they only plan to use two stalls.
yes, sir. They would, yeah, because the allowed use for 1.1 acre is only 2 horses.
And we might, if we approve this application, limit their use to only 2 stalls in
Yes,
the
sir.
barn.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Would that be possible to, can I question our secretary at this point? Would that be possible to administer from the city's point of view? That their use is only to 2 stalls and not any other stalls? In other words, if they have guests, they're not going to turn them out into another unused stall.
I mean, there wouldn't even be any reason to keep all 6 stalls if you're only going to use 2 of them. So that you could even restrict that they be boarded up or made into storage. I mean, the ordinance says you can only have 2 horses per acre or whatever. I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong terminology, but that's the rule. So if you got more than what your land's supposed to have, I'm assuming there is you have teeth in the ordinance to enforce that.
Well, part of your rationale is this would less impact the house next door as far as distance from the house and distance from their quarters. So I'm saying we might, if we approve this, we'd limit the use to 2 stalls. I just
Absolutely.
simply want to know if the city could enforce this.
If that's the condition the board put on, it would be enforceable same way as the number of horses that would be allowed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman.
Judy?
How long have the present owners owned this house?
Almost 2 years.
Okay. Did they buy that knowing that there was a restriction on the horses?
When they bought the property, we asked about asking for the variance for the horses, but it was the Sears family estate that owned it, and they said under no conditions would they make it a condition of the sale to do it because they weren't going to go through it again. The estate was not interested in going through it again. But obviously, and I don't know if you've been to the property.
Oh, yeah.
The stalls are there, the latches work, the doors closed, and there are bridle racks and saddle racks in the tack room. I think obviously they're going through this process now to hope to be able to get it reinstated, to use it under whatever guidelines and restrictions you see fit.
And they already have horses
Yes, ma'am.
in Florida or where they're from? Okay, thank you.
Have they explored other options such as boarding the horses elsewhere?
Well, I think there's, more to the question is why have the barn there if you can't put horses in it? And this is obviously at your discretion. We want to know, before they make any further renovations or do anything else to the property, whether they're going to be able to use the existing barn that was built in 1892 for what it was originally intended. That is at your discretion. We're asking for your permission to do it, or if you deny it, then obviously other plans would need to be made. But this is step one and the step that's most appropriate, not only for the owners, but for this historic property.
Our interest in this special exception request is how you address and plan to meet the 11 criterias. One of those 11 criteria, number 4, is concerned with the neighbors. Apparently, there appear to be very little concern about the neighbors, what the neighbors think.
Well, and I've read the letters. Most of the neighbors' complaint have to do with issues that are in place now that are governed by the ordinance for the care and maintenance of horses. I can't dispute. In my opinion, it's not whether you like horses here or you don't like horses here. It's whether you can enforce the existing rules that are in place in a horse town. The community has the ordinance. It's whether you guys choose to enforce the ordinance on this piece of property, and if the ordinance is properly enforced and lived by, the concerns of the neighbors don't exist, because the reason for the ordinance is to take care of flies, to take care of smell, and take care of all of those things that are the major concerns of the letters that I saw from the owners. And I understand that these are the 12 people that live close by. But the 70 signatures you see there, and if you look at the addresses, they're not people from Woodside, and I'm nothing against Woodside, but the majority of these people are people that live in the community that are within 2 blocks of a horse wherever they turn in the community. So I think that there is a representation here that it feels strongly about the idea of maintaining this estate in its present, or not the present use, but in its intended use.
Mr. Chairman, could we actually get that, those forms, and I think we have to say what exhibit it is. Could we get those packets passed around to us and give us a few minutes to look at them, please?
Mr. McMillan, may I call you back to the stand when we have a chance to review these?
Yes, sir. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
In the meantime, are there others to speak to the special exception?
We have a minute or two to get this done.
Go ahead and wait for me to listen.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Peace, and
Your
I
last name
am
again? Repeat your last name, please.
Peace. My husband and I own the horse property at 248 Marion Street. It is the property that is at the corner of, we own property on Williamsburg, Colleton, and Marion. We have a little over 2 acres there. I have a 16-stall barn. I've had up to 7 horses there at a time, never to the 16 that I've got stalls for. But in the time that I've had it, we have a neighbor that borders directly to our barn, who is on Marion Street. His back property line comes right up to my barn, and his,
Being inappropriate, but that is the photograph that you have in the package that you just passed around.
okay, his side property, or his, I guess that's his side property. His back property backs up to one of my paddocks. We originally had stockade fence there. We have taken that down and have done board fence so that he looks over into our paddocks rather than looking at stockade as he drives in his driveway, which he's thrilled with. We have 2 other neighbors who border on the north side, on the railroad side. And then, as I say, we've got Williamsburg on the other side. Of all our neighbors, we've got neighbors on Marion, we've got neighbors on Colleton, and now we're getting neighbors on Williamsburg with the new properties that are being built there. I've never had anyone ever complain about my horses, smell, flies, anything, and if somebody wants to prove me wrong, say so, but I have never had anybody object to the horses. Of the people in our area, they love seeing the horses. I think that's what they think keeps Aiken unique, of being able to have horses there. I ride from my property, as Carl was saying, I'll ride Marion Street to the cut-through, taking me over to Grace, and then I'll ride from there down to Hitchcock Woods. Other times, I will ride through the Parkway on Colleton, turn at Sumter, ride right past the Roswell property. That will take me to South Boundary, then across on Sumter, hack down Sumter, hit the dirt roads there. People seem to enjoy seeing the horses. I get nothing but waves and people stopping, saying, oh, so nice to see horses, and taking my picture. And but I have not had any complaints of flies, noise, nuisance, anything. And, as I say, I've had up to 7 horses there and have never had an issue. And I think that, if anything, having a horse property next to you makes your property a little unique. That's what's part of Aiken. And I must say that, the people who are building across the road from me on Williamsburg, they're not building just because it's looking across at somebody else's home. To look across at a horse property makes it a little nicer than just looking across the road at another house.
Does the board have any questions of Ms. Peace?
Yeah, I have a couple
Pat?
questions. You're on Colleton between Marion and Williamsburg?
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
And your property is zoned light industrial?
Part of it is residential.
Straight residential? Zoning map showed me all light industrial.
No,
How long have you had
only
horses on?
back section.
Doesn't matter. How
Yeah,
long have
only
you
the
had
back
horse-
section is light
How
industrial.
long have you had horses on it?
15 years.
Okay, so you were grandfathered, or did you have to apply for
No,
approval
no,
to have the horse?
it was a horse property when we purchased the
So it's been
property.
continued?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'm trying to relate the comparability of your property to this particular property, which is 2 blocks away in 2 blocks that are zoned straight residential.
Okay, well, where, I think only the back section of my property is light industrial. So everything from where the barn is, where the house is, and, paddocks on Marion, paddocks on Colleton, and one paddock on Williamsburg. That is all residential. Only the back section is the light industrial.
Okay, yeah, the lot across from you on Marion is zoned residential multi-light occupancy. I'm just trying to understand the comparability of your property to this particular property. You don't have to argue with me about it. I'm trying to understand the comparability is all.
My thought would be comparability. I've got, on Marion Street, across the road from me, is houses on, quarter acre lots, I assume, one right after another.
The new houses,
That's light industrial.
the new houses across the parkway.
Oh, no, that's on Williamsburg.
Okay,
Yeah, and I guess that is still, because that was the old brewery distributorship, that probably is still light industrial, but I thought that all got changed to
it
residential.
was changed to residential.
Yes, yes. But everything surrounding me on, the other two sides is residential. It's only our back section that's light industrial.
Thank you.
Judy, and then Bud.
You say you've been there with horses for 15 years, right? But it was a horse place before you got there, is that correct? Okay, so therefore the people who are surrounding you knew that that was a horse place when they moved in, right? Now the people who live at 230, the adjoining property, is that what you were talking about, 230 Marion Street? You were saying that that person, who lives next door?
Jim Sector?
Okay, your address is 248, right? Okay, so then there's a house next door. Are those horse people too? Do they have horses?
They do not have horses there.
Okay.
No, that's totally a residential lot. It's not an acre lot, never has been a
Okay.
horse property.
But that house, that property was up for sale several years ago. Is this a relatively new person?
That has sold several times
Okay.
since we've been there,
And
yes,
they knew
ma'am.
the horses were there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I certainly enjoy riding by and seeing the horses, but it's because since we've been in Aiken 43 years, and I think there've been horses there ever since. So that's what you expect, and so people moving in
Yeah.
expect to
Well,
have them there.
And, people seem to be very happy to have the horses, and as I say, when people go past on Marion, they always wave, or they'll,
Right.
stop to take pictures, and I think that's what makes Aiken unique.
Okay, thank you.
Bud.
Thank you.
You've owned the property 15 years. Prior to that, who was the owner? Was that the Bostwick family that had that tract?
Prior to that was, out of Kentucky, but I don't remember his name, and I believe he had horses there off and on. There were no horses there for several years prior to us purchasing the property. It was, somewhat, abandoned. They had moved out, and, nobody was living there.
Okay.
I don't know what might have happened, Mr. Chairman, but of course grandfathering, if you discontinue the use, I believe it's after 6 months, is that right, Mike? The grandfathering protection is lost. So either the property was approved specifically for horses after the granting of the new ordinances, or it was assumed to have had continued grandfather.
Ban.
I do not believe that in the time, 6 months prior, there had been horses there. I think it was at least a year plus from the time the previous owner had horses there. So there was a good bit of a lag when there were
So
no
you
horses
think
there.
technically the grandfathering was lost?
I don't know. Maybe I'm opening a bag of worms here.
I don't want to have Mike investigate this, but obviously it was something that we would enforce after the fact.
Hopefully not.
I think at this point it'd be an existing non-conforming if that's the case.
Yeah.
With the length of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to the special exception?
Yes, my name is Melissa Bodenheimer McInnes, and I grew up at 334 Sumter Street. I now live in Columbia. There are a few things, and you'll have to be patient with me because this is very emotional for us. We went through this 28 years ago when the Sears tried to get horses. This was weighed and vetted very carefully about what would be an acceptable compromise, which is having all things horse closer to the dwelling than to the other buildings for the neighbors. People vilified my family, tried to make it seem as though we hated horses, which is not the case. Mr. McMillan alluded to liking or not liking horses earlier. We love horses. We love Aiken. I am from Aiken, grew up in Aiken. I, had little campouts on the roof of the garage right next to the pool house, growing up. This is my home. This is not just a property I bought 2 years ago and don't even show up to the hearing to represent my request. Mr. McMillan also, 2 quotes that I wrote down that he said earlier, the reasons of concern of the neighbors don't exist. I don't want the neighbors' concerns to be dismissed or categorized by Mr. McMillan in any way. We're perfectly capable of speaking for ourselves. It is not that we don't like horses. It is not just flies. It is not just rats, which we had a problem from those stables previously. It is that Mr. McMillan, even at after the advice of Tommy Paradise, to please, speak to the neighbors and see how they feel about it, explain your position, what you'd like to do. From all the neighbors that we talked to, none were approached by, the owners or Mr. McMillan. There seems to be a complete disregard for the people where it's their home. The neighbors set up a website when they bought the house on Facebook. It's called Rose Wall, and underneath it says "Just for Fun." This is my home. This is my mother's home. Our neighbors have been there forever. It's not just for fun for us. And the thing is that they can have horses on the property under the ordinance as it's written today. They just have to have it closer to their dwelling than to our recreational buildings and those of the neighbors. He also said that the photographs were misleading. I have here, it's in your packet, one of the photos that I submitted that shows the backyard. And I don't know if you want me to bring it up there or if you'd like to find it on the big screen. But there is no apartment next to my mother's apartment. This is the bedroom. This is where the stable started. That's maybe 10 feet maximum from the window. This is where my father was in hospice care, and that's where he had to stay.
Is that photo in our packet?
Yes, it is. It's photo number 9.
Can we find it on the overhead so you can,
What number is it,
Which
John?
one, John?
It's photo number 9, page 10 in our packet.
Thank you.
Mr. Millen is correct. This is the apartment. This is the stable. Right here is the window to the bedroom in the living space. This is where my mother and father lived for many years when they had mobility issues. This is where my mother would live if she decided to move out of the main house, which is 2 stories. There's a window here. There's, you can't see this. This is the Venetia Rose artwork. There is, windows starting here for the stalls. This end of the property is finished for a pool house. And this, which Mr. McMillan referred to as just the patio, this is our living space outside. This is the pavilion. This is where we entertain. We have had time with Easter egg hunt. appreciate it being belittled. This building was originally a floor shop. We never thought it appropriate or asked that we be able to open it back up as a floor shop, even though that is the original use. There were 3 green houses here. We donated one to USC. We made this lovely pavilion out of the other one. To be dismissed that way is not appropriate. And yes, we are the most impacted by this. But there's good reason, and there's good reason why the ordinance is in place. What they're asking
Closer
for
to
is
the
preference on location of horses, not a need or necessity.
It'd be easier for us to hear if you were right there.
I'm sorry, it is very emotional for me. There's also, I think there was something on the next slide on 11, so you can see where the stalls stop. That's the inside of the pavilion. It's not just. Number 11 is the one.
Next one over.
That's enough. That's not the full picture. If you go back to 11, I don't know why it's not loaded. But you can see here. This is where the stalls stop. This is where our patio is. So this is the length of any 2 stalls that you chose to limit them to. This is a finished or semi-finished area. This is the area where the rats came over from previous owners. It's in disrepair today, when I looked at it the other day. This is not an income. I just want to make the point that this is not inconsequential to the neighbors. And, you know, we have you have this in your packet too.
Yes.
There's one addition I saw when I was reading the notes of opposition. This is the neighborhood. The owners could have bought property anywhere in Aiken. They could have bought property where the ordinance allowed for horses. They didn't. They bought this property. We bought this property in 1974. There weren't horses there. We came in with the expectation that there was not going to be horses next to us. And Mr. McMillan makes the point that it's imperative that they be restored, and yet when he's limited to 2, he has no problem with, converting the others to storage or whatever. Again, it's a preference. It's not an imperative that horses get put back in this original barn. And I would please ask your consideration. I don't want my mother to be taken advantage of. I don't want the other neighbors to be taken advantage of. So I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Any questions from the board?
Just one comment to you. While the case that Mr. McMillan makes that the stalls would be restricted to the ones that are around the corner on the L makes it, I think, a better situation than having the stalls immediately abutting your recreational area. According to the
They're all abutting.
According to the ordinance, they're still far closer to your recreational area than the residents. So, I mean, that's all we're concerned about as far as the ordinance.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Melissa?
Yes.
Your family, the Bodenheimer family, bought the residence and the property in 1974?
74, yes.
Okay, and when your mother and father bought the property, I want to recall that Mrs. Lachlan still lived in the house or the residence that's in question now, is that?
She did live in the house.
She was part-time, if I recall. Is that right?
Yeah,
maybe.
I can't
maybe-
answer that. I know.
Okay.
My mother confirms
And
that.
so at that time, certainly when she was there, or when y'all bought the place and she was there part-time, there were no horses there. There was not any indication that horses were there. Is that your understanding?
They had a small pond, fish pond, and 2 mallard ducks in the backyard, to be specific. I know that from my hideout on top of the garage. Yes, and I also want to say that when we were speaking with the neighbors, my sister and I, we spoke with Mr. Perry, who is related to the McCartys, who was the original owner. We are the second owners at 334 Sumter Street. And he relayed the story that when Miss McLaughlin last had horses, she didn't keep them there. She had them brought over during the day and returned at night, so they were not in residence at the home even then.
I have a question and/or comment. Photo 7 on page 8 is rather telling, I think, of the close proximity.
Yes.
This is your house, right?
That is the living space where my father and my mother lived, and that's where my mother would move if she moved out
So
of the
that
larger
is a
home.
bedroom on the other side of that wall?
That is a bedroom with a window, yes. 2 windows, 3 windows, actually. That's actually my sister.
Okay.
Is that an exhibit number, John?
It's
Seven.
page 8, photo 7.
8.
It's page 8 on photo 7.
That distance is less than 2 feet.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I have one other picture that I did not put in there because I didn't want overwhelm. But if I could show it to you, it shows the back window and how close it is to the stable.
I think we've all been,
Yeah, we
we
visited the
visited the property. We've all visited the property. Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, going back to that particular photo, could you point to the building that's your, what'd you call it, guest house?
Yes, guest house or living space. My
Yeah.
parents had it as their
It's
residence.
that building to the right?
Yes.
Yes. This is the bedroom.
Okay, and that building is on the other property, and that's the back corner of the barn?
This is, actually, this front part is an apartment, and where the horses
Good
come
time.
in and out through that door. And then the other photo shows you that just shortly back there is the actual stables begin.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do we have others to speak?
Good evening. I'm Rosalie Fox, and I live at 616 Colleton. I also own the house next door at 610 Colleton, which is our cottage, former horse property. I have a barn on 610, a small carriage barn. The property was built for the Vanderbilt's driver. He gave it to them. Morris Rudnick tells me the title reads, as an act of kindness for his years of service. I haven't seen the title. I am a horse owner. I formerly owned property on Two Notch Road in the Horse District. It never occurred to me to try to convert my property on Colleton to horse property because as a horse owner, I would consider that inappropriate. There's simply not room, if you're kind to horses, for such a small space. I would also not do that because you cannot control for certain kinds of critters you find around a barn. Horses leave a lot of manure behind. They graze 23 hours a day, and it only takes 15 minutes for what they're grazing on to pass through their system. And flies lay eggs in the manure, and even with copious amounts of fly spray during the summer, you can't control the flies, and you can't tell the flies where the property lines are. I previously wrote a letter to Mr. Paradise that I asked to be distributed to you, and I'm sure he did. And in that letter, I explained some of my misgivings, some about the evaluation of neighboring properties, and some about the concerns I had for safety and health issues. In a barn, it's inevitable that you get flies, you get reptiles, you get cats, you get hawks flying through. A barn is a busy place. It isn't just horses, it's a very busy place. And even if you make the greatest efforts to keep your barns and your paddocks clean, there's still horse manure and all the other residuals that go with large animals. And large animals, farm animals kept in a small urban property is just far more problematic than keeping farm animals out on farms. I assume there's a reason that follows my thinking that we have both a horse property and a historic property or districts. The two are mutually exclusive, and we do have a couple of exceptions in the historic district, but those have long histories. And the one I tried to buy that Joey Peace now owns was without horses for many years. When I was thinking about buying it before she bought it, horses were no longer kept there, and there was a question of whether or not I could get the right to keep horses there, so we bought property on Two Notch instead. After giving the board the first letter, or giving Mr. Paradise the first letter for distribution to the barn, I began to think about some of the property problems that we have had in the past few years right in the areas adjacent to this property that's the subject of your consideration tonight. Back in 2009, the historic property at Orry and Colleton and Marion was sold by the Pearsons, and there were some problems. I don't know the nature of them. I only know what was rumored, and I'm not going to share that. But the property was abandoned for a time, and there was a swimming pool which filled up with green slime. The gates flew open and closed in the wind. The neighbors complained of reptiles, large snakes and feral cats and other critters going into the property and staying there. And I wrote the city, and I got a response from the city. I will read my response, and it's signed by the mayor, and I will share copies with all of you if I may.
I'm missing your point. What's the point you're trying to make?
The point I am about to make is that last night, as I thought about all of this, I realized that we've had a number of problems having to do with safety and health issues, or having to do with enforcement of ordinances in our neighborhood. And we seem to have either a lack of regulation or the inability to implement regulations, or the lack of enforcement of the regulations. And I wanted to share some of these problems with the board because I think it bears to the issue of whether or not we want to grant variances and exceptions that might lend itself to even more problems, safety and health problems. The first letter I got from Mayor Kavanaugh said, "Dear Rosalie, I just wanted to give you an update on the safety work at Let's Pretend. A week ago, the work was completed to eliminate the safety items and animal concerns that we all had. These items were cover openings in the foundation, cut down the tall weeds in the backyard, lock the gates, remove the loose boards, etc. from the house, and added chemicals to the pool and covered it. I want you to know that our staff and inspectors are on the job and staying close to the issue. Roger and I have discussed a couple of things we can do in the future to try to discourage this type of situation from occurring. We appreciate your bringing this to our attention and look forward to you being at our next city council meeting to give us your thoughts. Sincerely, Fred. And then there was a follow-on. That letter was written on October 21, 2009. Was the follow-on to the original discussion about the safety problems. Some of the problems that we have had since then and apparently weren't resolved by whatever Fred and Roger suggested be changed to see that that sort of thing didn't happen again, has happened. And I will read you the letter that I wrote last night to you.
Is that pertinent to?
It is pertinent. We have had problems, and these problems have gone unresolved. And I think that the issue before you now will add to these problems, and I'm wondering about how we will resolve those, if I may. For at least the past 10 years, a series of safety and health issues and disregard for property maintenance has been allowed to occur and continue unabated in Aiken's historic district. The application to convert 607 to horse property in the midst of an established residential area will carry on this pattern of city neglect. By way of examples, the historic 9,000 square feet residence, let's pretend, was abandoned several years ago. In 2009, I appeared before the City Council to complain that the gates to the property were swinging open and the swimming pool was full to the brim with green slime. That was a safety and health hazard, especially to children. There were also tall weeds in the yard and gaping holes in the structure where a lot of boarding had been removed to treat wood rot. Neighbors were complaining of large snakes and other critters living in and under the house. A letter from Mayor Kavanaugh dated 10/21 in 2009 indicated to me that the problems would be solved, and he and the city manager were discussing future actions to try to discourage this type of situation from occurring in the future. The city manager, Roger Leduc, also kept me updated by telephone on the status of the resolutions. In that same time frame, a contractor was given variances to develop lots on Sumter between Colleton and the railroad cut. Most of the work was never completed. Large abandoned trash piles were left for several years. An incomplete brick foundation still stands today. The area was not only an eyesore and blight on the historic district, it was an attraction to feral animals and reptiles. In 2015, the owner of the property on the northeast corner of Colleton and Sumter tore down the fence between my guest house at 610 Colleton and the abandoned house on his property, loaded my wood into his truck, and drove away. In court on December 14, 2015, he testified to the judge that he would return the wood from my fence and build a new fence. He did return my wood, but has never built a new fence. As far as I know, he had no city permit to tear down my fence. He also applied to the city for a permit to clear cut the lot, but has not done so. He also testified that he would tear down the abandoned house and clean up the lot. He has done neither. The lot has overturned plastic chairs and mattresses laying around among piles of trash. Wild cats and their kittens live in the house. Warm weather will probably bring other critters to the site. The lot is an eyesore in the historic district, which the city touts as a tourist attraction and a resource for attracting business and investments in the area.
Ms. Burke, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to call time on you. Because I do not see where this is germane to our issues that we're dealing
Well,
with
my
tonight.
point is that these series of things that some people find amusing, and I do not as a resident of the area, is that there have been a series of issues which there are apparently some kind of regulations to prevent. But the city has lacked the ability or the intent to prevent these issues. And so when someone wants to convert a piece of property so small into a piece of horse property, I'm concerned because we've not been able to enforce regulations in the past, at least the 15 years I've lived on Colleton. And I don't believe that that will change in the future if I'm to look at the historic record. So issues like flies, issues like runaway horses, issues like taking the horses down Colleton Avenue. Now there's only a couple of people that do that, and that's fine. But it wouldn't be fine if there were an increasing number. That's the issues that I want to bring before the board, and I recommend against these applications.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have others to speak?
Hi. My name is Kent Baldwin. I live at 621 Colleton Avenue, directly next door to the subject property. I want to thank you for your time tonight, and I want to begin by just right out of the gate letting you know we object to this application, and we request that you do not approve it on a number of fronts and reasons. The most basic reason for our objection is horses just do not belong on this property or in this part of the neighborhood. The property is not sized appropriately for horses. The neighborhood has long moved on from horses being in the neighborhood. The residents in and around this property have purchased, have bought, and live in this neighborhood, counting on the zoning ordinance that does not permit horses to be there. Our property values are invested in that, and we feel that allowing horses on this property will detrimentally impact our values and our lifestyle. The negative impact on us as direct neighbors and the other neighbors is obvious, and it's really mind-boggling to me that anyone would propose this. We've owned a horse. We understand the type of property needed to properly support a horse, as well as the property maintenance required. This property doesn't come close to meeting even a minimum standard of that. It's not even feasible. The size of the property, the structures, the percentage of coverage on this lot leaves so little area for the horses that for them to humanely stay there is ridiculous. There will be a detrimental impact with odors, rodents. There's a drainage problem already on Horry Street. It floods every time it heavily rains. This will only compound the issue. The introducing horses to this property will affect the lives of those nearby, much less us next door, and it'll reduce, property values will be reduced to compensate for the public safety and nuisance risks that will exist. A lot of the technical aspects of this application are seriously flawed. In the special exception application, I feel it's important that we keep in mind they purchased this home knowing that it was in a zone that does not allow horses. It's not a right. It should not be granted a special exception in our opinion. The size, shape, and character of this lot is not suitable for horses. Acreage alone is not enough. The arrangement of the stable, pool, garage, formal gardens, and house are not compatible with properly keeping horses on this property. The neighbors are going to bear the brunt of these impacts. Our homes, our accessory structures, buildings are closer to to us than they are to this primary residence. The applicant stated that the Bodenheimers are the only ones that have a structure closer than this primary residence. It's not correct. We have a pool, we have a garage, we have a accessory building that will be closer than this house. So we will be impacted. You know, the notion that the privacy fencing and walls will mitigate any adverse effect is ridiculous. There's a haphazard stockade fence, chain link fence, barbed wire fence, patchwork of unfinished brickwork that are clearly not going to be capable of housing these horses, and they're not an asset to the neighborhood. The proximity of the stable to the adjacent dwelling does impose public health concerns. It's only a few feet from the Bodenheimers. It's just not appropriate. As far as the variance request is concerned, as I mentioned before, the fences, walls, and barbed wire are not adequate buffers for this neighbor. More importantly, we should not be considering a variance that allows a use that requires it to be buffered from neighbors. I mean, that's the purpose and reason for zoning and ordinances, and we rely on the protection of those ordinances. The prior owner did not forfeit his right to keep horses, as stated in this application. The prior owner never had horses, and it's been over 50 some odd years since they were there. The neighborhood's moved on, like I said, from this style of living. It's not appropriate. The existence of the barn is not sufficient reason to impose horses on this and neighboring properties. They're prohibited. It's not appropriate. Using the logic within the application would allow us to request a variance for an obsolete outhouse on our property. It's just flawed thinking, and it shouldn't be allowed. The threat of subdividing the property shouldn't be a factor either. This barn could easily be repurposed with some creativity, as was done in other properties of the neighborhood. It would add value to that property and to the neighborhood. The historic balance of the neighborhood does not depend on having horses in this property. Good design, proper upkeep, and basic respect for the historic character of the property is far more important. There's been allusions to mistakes that have been made on this property. The Design Review Board has dropped the ball on several issues. It's impaired the property and negatively impacted the neighborhood. To me, this is just a cute real estate ploy to increase the property's value for a very small set of would-be buyers without any consideration or respect for the neighbors that have to live with these impacts on their daily lives and the negative property values that will certainly result. We ask the citizens of Aiken, and particularly the residents to this neighborhood, depending on you, the Board of Zoning Appeals, to protect us and deny this application. Thank you.
Do we have any questions to Mr. Baldwin?
I have a question. Yeah, Kent, please. I'm glad you showed up because you did mention something that I would like to clarify even further. There is a building in your rear yard that's on the east side, south of your house. What's the nature of that building?
It's a storage, garage, shop building that we house garden tools, shop equipment.
It is a shop,
Yes.
so you do work in there regularly. Does that qualify as a, Mike, as a outbuilding for the purpose of measuring the closeness of the stall, the stalls to be used, and the paddocks being closer to his building rather than as opposed to as compared to the applicant's house?
I would interpret that as an accessory structure that would come in.
Okay, so there's actually two.
We have an exercise equipment in there. We use it on almost a daily basis.
Okay, so they mentioned that the Bodenheim had a property that is, the stalls and the paddock would be closer to their property. It's equal in your case as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would the pool,
Go ahead, Bud.
Chairman, would the pool fall in that same category? Mike, didn't you say you had a pool?
Do,
Back there, does that fall
I
in
would
that
deem
category?
that as an accessory
Oh, you have a
structure
pool?
also. That's
Yes.
what
Oh,
we look
didn't realize.
It's closer
Where
than
is that
the
relative to your house?
storage building.
It's closer, you say it's closer to,
It's as close as the storage garage outbuilding that we have on our property.
Okay, that's not on the plat map, but I didn't see it from when
The overhead view, the GIS map, you'll see pool. Actually, the photograph,
I'm not sure which direction, but.
Okay.
That one shows pools, yeah.
So if we do talk about 3B, there's two properties.
Yeah, right.
that's why I'm,
Move it up higher.
being floating in the pool, So here at the pool, this is, you know, where I think the barn is right here. This is the residence of the applicant.
Your building,
Our home is here.
but the workshop you're talking about.
You can't face the other way and circle your work shed, work building.
It's hidden behind the trees. But
Mr. Patanini, on the memorandum 3B, I think Tommy did copy what it talks about. It says, kept in nearest premises that are no closer to the dwelling buildings, accessory buildings, and recreational structures on adjoining lots, which those would have.
So in 3B, we have two properties.
Two problems, yeah, right.
Quick question on the, you referenced flooding on Ori, and your thought that having horses on this property would adversely impact that?
Well, I think that's more, I guess, pertinent if the Ori property was going to be part of this application, but there's a serious flooding problem when it rains, so if the Ori property was also going to be where they paddocked and kept horses,
You had a
and
runoff
were trailing
concern.
in and out of there, it floods and is underwater, and even,
Yeah, the applicant's rep stated that the intention is to divide that off,
I know.
I assume for sale, regardless of the disposition of this application.
But it did allude to that in the staff report, that the Horry property would be part of and paddocks. Yep.
it was written before they.
Okay, thank you. Do we have others to speak to the?
Thank you, everybody. My name is Beth Bodenheimer DeBorianen. I'm Kay Bodenheimer's daughter. My sister and I grew up in that house at 334 Sumter Street.
Your address, please?
Mine is 319 South Chimney Lane in Columbia, but we are co-heirs to this.
Your mother's house.
That's correct. And we spend quite a bit of time there. My sister has said almost everything I need to say to you. My mother's lived there 42 years. We have a great neighborhood. One of the things that mystifies me is how the owners, who are, at least he is listed as a real estate investor, would buy a property knowing full well that there was an ordinance regarding the horses and the proximity to adjoining properties, without talking to neighbors, without looking into it. If they are so intent on having the horses there, when there are other properties available 2 blocks over in the horse district with the dirt lanes, out, in the country, there's huge farms, even fox chase. But they chose not to do that, and they should have full knowledge of that. They also should have had full knowledge that there was 28 years ago a huge meeting of the minds over this, and in which it was very much opposed by some of the neighbors that are here tonight and others at that time. There was a good reason why that ordinance was in effect. Particularly, my mother's property is affected. As you saw, it is 2 feet from our guest house. Probably about 23 years ago, my father renovated that floral shop, a historic building that was operated in the 1930s. We can't operate it as business, wouldn't want to, wouldn't do it to our neighbors. He put probably $40,000 plus 23 years ago into that building. It's beautiful. It is used every month. Like I said, my parents lived there 5 years. My mother may move back out there again if she needs to. My children, my friends, my family, they come and stay in that house. It's used probably once a month, as is the recreational area. So it is something we use on a regular basis. Mr. McMillan said that he did not see the relevancy in asking about the status of the current owners, but I do have to ask that because I think Mr. McMillan told me directly that they would be part-time residents. you know, we're full-time residents. We've lived here all our lives. My mother does. Many neighbors, Mr. Holly, you name it. I do question, we have heard about the marital status. We've heard that they do not intend to live here. We have heard that the house has been unofficially shown, which leads me to believe that perhaps the property is being prepped to be sold for the maximum profit. I don't know. I think that's an important question to ask. A lot of other things have been covered, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the precedent that would be set if this variance was granted. There is no other property that I can think of that pushes the boundaries of proximity and necessity more than this one. That stable is literally on the line. It is 2 feet from the guest house, 6 feet from our recreation area, and it's closer to our own residents, to their house. If this is granted, there are plenty of other neighbors that have unused historic stables that fall more within the reasonableness of the ordinance. If this was granted, I think it would be heading down the slippery slope of, you know, others coming forward, wanting the same, wanting to have their variances granted, and I just think it could change the whole dynamic of the neighborhood. Like my sister said, it's a very emotional topic for us. We love that neighborhood. We love our neighbors, and I would just ask you to look at the facts and please support us on this one.
I might add that every variance request that we get on this board, each must stand its own merit. We don't set precedents for that automatically a fall for the next application.
Yes, sir.
Question from the board? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Lynn Scribner, and I am new to Aiken. I moved here from Carmel, California, another little-known winter colony. And I moved here for the horses. And my husband and I hope very much to purchase a property in the horse district on which we can keep horses. So this issue is very near and dear to my future, if not my past. I think there's nothing wrong with fun. One of the attacks on these properties' owners and their wanting to keep horses here today was that it was just for fun, and it was stated, and I see nothing wrong with fun in this property or any other. I do respect that the folks that stated those opinions have lived here a long time and feel strongly about their home. I see nothing wrong with profit, real estate profit or any other kind of profit. If there is a profit motive, well, you know, the values in Aiken going up is always probably a good thing for all of you who live here in Aiken. Mr. Bodenheimer, I believe I'm saying that right, said that his property will go down in value if horses are allowed next door. And I believe that from what I can see as an outsider looking in, the properties that allow horses are worth more money than the properties that don't. So I'm not sure I understand his comment there. I also believe Mr. Bodenheimer's property is for sale and that he's moving apparently from that property.
Mr. Bodenheimer is.
Ma'am, we don't allow shouts from the audience.
But anyway, and I realize we also listened to health concerns about horses from someone who appeared to have a gripe about, a previous long ago gripe about fencing, and someone who stole wood from her, and I do feel sorry for that, and I know those kinds of things are very frustrating. But I would just like to say, I vote, you know, if I were voting, you know, I voted by moving here, right? I would like to see as many horse properties as is practical and possible within the greater horse district and beyond as you can bear. Thank you very much.
Any questions from Ms. Sharp?
Just one comment to you. We on the board, and certainly the city, are very enthusiastic about protecting the use and the presence of horses in Aiken. And as regard to horses in residential areas, we have substantial property that is zoned horse district and RSS residential single-family stable, and also residential stable to provide for that. The restrictions are in residential areas, and there is no use of horses by right. It's only by special exception where it doesn't negatively impact on other properties.
Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the special exception?
My name is Kay Bodenhammer, and the other man was Mr. Baldwin. I own the property that is apparently closest to the stables. The stables,
Ms. Bonham, would you pull the mic down a little bit,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
I hadn't done this in a long time, 28 years as a matter of fact. I own that property at 334, and the guest house is 332, something, actually there are two buildings there. I want to thank all of you for doing the job that you do. I wouldn't want to do it myself. I think it's very hard, but I appreciate the fact that you will think clearly about everything that you do. I also want to say that I thank my daughters for doing my part of what has been done so far. I have a few things to say, but they have done a lot of the legwork, and I thank them. And I also would like to thank the other people who have been opposed to this variance, excuse me. But I also want to thank Mr. Baldwin for saying what he said. If I had my way of saying as well as he does, I'd be very happy. He said exactly what I think. And so I hope you will remember that and listen to that. I do have one particular point that I want to go back to, and that is the odor of manure, and not just the manure. Urine is the real problem with that, and there's always that combination. Several years ago, and I don't want to go into the past, but there was a place that was a collection place for horse debris, I guess is the best way for me to say it. And it was on the corner of Whiskey and South Boundary on the side that the museum is now on, catty-cornered across from the library. When you went by that corner and turned the corner, you had, if you were trying to smell the odors in the spring of Aiken, you had to roll up your windows because you could not get past that corner because of that odor and whatever. I'm not the only one who thinks that. There's somebody sitting here who is a friend of mine who has a pool not very far from that, about 3 blocks from that. And she has told me that during that time that they could not use their pool, not because of the odor they were willing to go through that, but because the flies that were being hatched in all of that mess were bothering them so much that they could not enjoy the pool on their property, which is something I think my neighbors who have been fortunate enough to have pools should consider. But odors, even though the stables seem to have a wall behind them between my house and theirs, it doesn't matter. That odor does not come out of the stable and sit up here in the air. That odor comes out of the stable and spreads to the entire neighborhood. And it would be an everyday thing for those of us who live there all the time, and even if we didn't. It would happen every morning. We would walk out of our houses, do whatever we were doing, and there would be that horrid odor that we really cannot control. Now, can I tell you a rat problem? Okay, this is for entertainment as well as information. We had a small terrier who barked at a wood pile that was away from the stable walls, so 10 feet away. And we didn't know why, and so we started pulling the wood off the wood pile one day while she was barking, and out ran a rat, not a mouse, a rat without the tail, this long, black, the kind you see in horror movies. We called the exterminator. The people who owned the property at the time were not there. I have to say this was from dog food, not from horse stuff. But the rats had chewed through what was supposedly an impenetrable container. And he killed 8 to 10 rats, I'm not sure. Now this is the part that I think you might enjoy. My son was walking home from Aiken Elementary, which is now the library, and he came in and he said, "Mom, I saw the strangest thing. You've got to come look," when I walked through the parkway a minute ago. And I said, "What was it?" He said, "There was a big, long, black snake out there, and it had 8 lumps in it. I counted them. There was a snake, then a lump, then snake, then a lump." The snake was a rat snake, I guess. And he had come in and had smelled or found out somehow that those rats were there and had eaten them. And I walked out and watched him go straight up a tree. He did not wiggle. He went straight up the tree, out on a limb, and I could not see him. So I advise you to be careful when you walk on the tree limbs in Aiken. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Do we have others to speak to either the special exception or the variance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Marshall Cain, C-A-I-N. I do not live in the neighborhood, but I do live probably 3 or 4 blocks from it at 807 Oleander Drive at the intersection of Oleander and can't think of it now. I'll try not to be very brief, and I'll try not to be repetitive, because practically every point has been covered here tonight. Let me mention a couple of points I think that have not been covered. I've lived in Aiken since 1935, and during that period of time, rules, regulations, ordinances have grown for the protection of property, and I think to the good. It's been for the protection of homeowners, and I served as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And very rarely did we grant exceptions because it would derogate the right of property owners who had purchased property relying upon those rules and regulations and ordinances. My concern, every time there is a petition for an exception to what has been enacted, is that it is an erosion of some of these rules and regulations and ordinances which have been enacted for the protection of the property owners. I'm quite certain when Mr. John Bodenheimer, who was a very good lawyer, purchased this property many years ago, he relied upon the ordinances and rules and regulations that govern this section of Aiken. And I doubt very seriously if he would have purchased this property had it not been had it been a horse barn next to him. I'm also concerned that once an exception is granted for 2 horses, when there are other stables in this property, it'd be so easy to grant an exception for a 3rd horse and a 4th horse, and so on down. Once that exception is listed, it's so easy to proceed on. I think granting an exception in this case would adversely affect the real estate values of the Bodenheimers. As a prospective purchaser, I think I would think very seriously not to buy property which had horse barns next to it because of the odor, because of the flies, and because of the adverse effect on the property. It becomes less desirable when that happens. So I urge you to seriously consider these points as well as the others that have already been brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall. Do we have others to speak to the special exception or the variance?
Board members, I thank y'all for your time today. My name is Danielle Surtek. I've been a Aiken resident here for 14 years, originally from Columbia, South Carolina.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Must be my hearing.
Is that better, sir?
Yes.
Oh, it seems loud, okay. My name is Danielle Surtek. I've been an Aiken resident for 14 years. Originally came from Columbia, South Carolina. I do not live next to the property, however, I do live here in town. And I look at this as what drew me to Aiken, why I came here, why I want to buy property here. I'm into the horses, grew up showing, and what drew me to Aiken after college was the horse community, the historic value of what we have within Aiken, and how that was different than any other place I had been within the U.S. and other continents. So I hear concerns today from the manure, the flies, and I can understand that. As a horse person, that does happen. I think with the regulations that are in town today, and with proper monitoring, a lot of those go away with the fly spray systems we have, with the constant manure removal. The days of having a manure pit outside of your door are far and few between. So I would ask that, you know, as me, a younger Aiken resident, just starting my way here, I'm 35 years old, that in having a proper area for horses, obviously it's had horses there 100 years ago, it wasn't inhumane, that you would look at if the paddocks are organized correctly, if you are able to have the proper fly spray systems, the proper regulations in place. I think it adds to your property value versus decreasing.
Ms. Surtek, just for the record, would you read into the record your address, please?
Yes, I'm at 245 Newberry Street.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to either the special exception or the variance?
Good evening. My name is Dennis Freeland. I am a property owner at 906 Colleton, so we're a couple of blocks away from this particular property in question.
Near what cross street?
Colleton and Williamsburg. I'd like to say that I think the discussion here tonight has really kind of digressed into areas that probably have really very little bearing on what the owners are looking for here. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about, you know, algae-covered swimming pools and broken fences and tall weeds and on and on and on. And at the end of the day, this is really about the desire of a homeowner to return a property to the way it was intended to be used. And that's exactly what this property was. This is probably one of the older homes in Aiken. Aiken expends unlimited resources and time to promote the community as historical, as equestrian friendly. To deny this application is a step in the wrong direction. On one hand, we're trying to promote the equestrian lifestyle. You're trying to promote the rich history of this city, which it does have. It's very unique. I've only lived here a couple of years, but the reason I came here was the very reason that, you know, that we were looking for. We're looking for this type of place. For you folks to vote against this, I think, is a step in the wrong direction. And I would urge you to please consider it favorably. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Sprayland? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to either the special exception or the variance?
Evening. My name is Judith Cato, and I live at 622 Magnolia Street Southeast, which is on the dirt road in the Historic District. And I believe that I take exception to the idea that having horses will devalue property values. I don't think there is one property in the horse district that is under $1 million, and actually probably far greater than that. I am surrounded by horses and manure And I can assure you that anyone that's going to invest that kind of money is not going to find it acceptable to live with flies and rats and rodents. I have none of that and never have. And I think that particularly this year, I've never seen such an influx of visitors coming to this town because they want to be here where the horses are. So I just take exception to the idea that it will devalue a property by adding horses. Thank you.
Any
Question,
questions?
please. Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Pat.
you live in the Horse District?
622 Magnolia, right on the dirt road between Mead and Grace.
So the property surrounding you is zoned HD or RSS?
It's, I believe, HD. I'm just surrounded by horses.
It's zoned HD or RSS.
Okay.
Which is specific for horse use, either commercial or recreational.
All right.
Okay, thank
However,
you.
I do suggest that it is obviously of great value. Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to either the special exception or the variance?
Hello, my name is Nicholas Devorianen. I live on 319 South Chimney Lane. I don't live here, but oftentimes during the year, I try to make time to come up and visit my grandmother. And I have a lot of memories surrounding, her house and her property, and a lot of those memories don't have the smell of horse waste in them. And I would like to keep it that way, but it's just, I think it has to be taken into consideration that the houses that would not lose value are also in a horse district where it's commonplace to have horse smells and everything that accompanies it and the like.
Questions? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to either the special exception or the variance? Final call. Others to speak to the special exception or the variance? I was going to call you for your rebuttal.
Oh, okay. Well, is there anyone else then before?
No, you.
We're fair and balanced.
Thank you, and I promise to make this very brief. I understand the emotions, I understand the history, I understand the neighborhoods of where you grew up. I'm sensitive to all of those things. But when you look at the black and white of what is supposed to be the nuisance or the smell or the horses, the city of Aiken has ordinances in place that protects the properties that have these large animals. We've had people testify that have horses here in town that live in the horse district. I live in the horse district, the Marion Drive. The smell, this isn't 1980. They're fly systems. You actually give horses medication to kill the fly larvae. The manure has to be moved out twice a week. The shavings now have deodorizers in them. This is not the old 1970 manure pit in the backyard. These rules are in place for a reason, and they work. This property certainly can support 2 horses. There is no precedence being set by this. There's no such thing as a precedence when you grant these things. So there is no slippery slope. There is no nuisance because the city of Aiken has the rules in place to take care of those. Thank you very much for your consideration. I hope that is at the forefront when you make this decision. Thank you.
Before you leave, questions, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Pat.
You certainly seem fluent in relations and things, and I thank you for all the information. I'm just curious about one thing. When the present owners bought the property, they were aware of the zoning restrictions. They were aware of the closeness of the neighbors. At any time, did you or they contact any of the neighbors, especially Mr. Baldwin or the Bodenheimers, regarding their plans for the property, bringing horses on, changing the walls, things like that.
Yes, and they were all very clear that they had no interest in seeing horses back on the property. But in their thoughts, and honestly, myself as a horseman and an Aiken resident, it's part of the greater good. Everything that they've talked about here tonight in a negative way only has to do with the nuisance issue of an animal. That's a moot point. If you take that out of the scenario, there was nothing that they put forth today that would disallow the use of the horses on that property. So it's an historic barn, it's a beautiful property, and they wanted to put it back to its intended use. Obviously, they knew when they bought it that this was a process, and they hesitated to even put forth in this process. Actually, I've encouraged them to move forward with this because I have a heartfelt belief that that property, it's a beautiful barn. I grew up in barns. My family grew up in barns. I have a passion for keeping things the way they were. This is a decision you guys have to make. They knew that it didn't have horses when they bought it, but that's why we have rules and the opportunity to step forward and ask for special permission in exceptional circumstances on an exceptional piece of property.
Well, you do live in the horse district, and obviously there's far more space to keep horses, but I congratulate you and them. It's unfortunate that the neighbors are not supportive, but I congratulate you and the owners for at least going through the effort of communicating with them before you initiated this. Thank you.
Thank you.
You gonna let him come up?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
We've never been contacted by this fellow or the neighbors about this application whatsoever, for the record, okay? So I don't know where he's coming from.
Thank you.
All right.
Question?
Be a gentleman.
I was contacted by the Bodenheimers after the application was in place. I know that the owners had conversations prior to the application. I was told when we did the application that their positions were known and stated, and it really wasn't going to do any good to communicate because their mind was already made up. So we made the application. I didn't go knock on anybody's door. Obviously, there was no changing their minds, and that was why we moved forward with the public notice in the application.
Just said he did, though.
For you. I was never contacted. I've never seen Mr. McMillan before or talked with him. My daughter did call him after the application was made, not before, but we have not been contacted.
We're trying not to get into a who said. Yeah. You have a question? Yes.
Mr. McMillan or the owners contacted my mother, my family. When we got the notification in the mail, I talked to Tommy Paradise and told him as a neighbor, I would like to talk to the owners or their agent about the situation because there was a genuine problem and we wanted to have a conversation as a neighbor with him. I called Mr. McMillan, and he said that he had not talked to us because Mr. Paradise had told him there was no need, that the information would be sent out anyway. But he did not contact us. I told him at the end of the conversation that while I did not agree with what I'd heard so far, I would listen to everything he sent to me or told me with an open mind. And I got a text back saying, we talked about the subdivision plan, that he had, that there was not a plan after all to subdivide. And that was the last I heard, but he did not contact us. I contacted him for our family. Never seen the owners, never heard from the owners.
That's why we send out notices to contiguous property owners about the request, the application that we have received. I saw two other hands for questions, comments, quick comments.
I guess I don't see him.
And I'll do a final call for anyone to speak to either the special exception or the variance? Seeing, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Pat?
I, for one, and I'm sure I speak for other members of the board, will defend vigorously the presence of horses in Aiken, particularly on lots that are zoned for horses. I think it's a special circumstance. We've had a number of cases where applications are made for horses in residential areas. And there, I think the criteria must be considered with great care. I think the application may marginally meet a number of the criteria. In my mind, the clear consideration is whether it meets criteria number 4, and that's compatible with existing uses and adjacent to and near properties. For that reason, I make a motion to deny the application.
Bud, you second? It has been properly moved and second that the application for the special exception be denied. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I think that 28 years ago, an ordinance was passed and a compromise was made, and in that time, there wasn't any public outcry for a lack of horses in that neighborhood. I think everyone should be entitled to the protection of the ordinance, and whether it's horse manure or little green men, the perception is that everyone should be able to go to bed at night knowing that their property values and rest peacefully in their homes and knowing that their property values are secure. I think Mr. Baldwin made a good point that the neighborhood has long moved on from having horses, and that is a reason why I'm going to vote the way I do. Thank you.
To Board Member Paternitti's initial comment, I think the owners of the property, Mr. McMillan, as an agent, should be commended for trying to, and I think we're all on board with this, trying to preserve some of these historic Aiken properties. The issue, unfortunately, is the 11 criteria to make that happen. We're trying to do it in a residentially zoned area. It's just, the tie, if there even is a tie, has got to go to the homeowners there who, by my count, there are 11 immediately adjacent neighbors to this property who are opposed to the vision of restoring this to a horse property in a area that's not by right zoned for horses. So unfortunately for me, that is that's the tiebreaker I'm employing as you look at all 11 exemptions that the applicant must pass without question, and it's just hard to do it with what I heard.
Mr. Chairman, I think criteria number 4 is the one that's the killer for this, because when people move onto a property, if there are existing horses there, then they know that they are there. And so they make that ruling that I want to live near horses. But when there's property and there are no horses and you move in and then you want to change it, I think that criteria number 4, it's going to adversely affect the neighborhood.
Mr. Chair, as one who seconded Pat's motion, I too have had an issue with trying to meet, in my mind, all or each one of the 11 criteria outlined in the criteria that we have to go by, and that's outlined in state law. I, for one, have grown up in this town, been part of the horse district all my life, and then some. So, trust me, horses are very sensitive and been part of my life and my family's well-being for many, many years. But I agree with my colleagues that is this compatible with the existing uses adjacent to and near the property? And I can't see where it is. Thus, my feeling of not having to support this variance and the special exception.
We have been talking about specifically the 11 criteria that we are to make a ruling on, and we've been talking about criteria number 4. I also see a problem with criteria number 6, which talked about the odors, smells, things that would adversely affect the neighborhood. And there was one other thing that bothered me in the staff report. The project description talked about 2 horses. As I read further in the staff report, I saw 3 horses. I said, where did the 3rd horse come from? And then I looked at Mr. McMillan's letter, your response, you talked about 3 horses.
The reason it was modified is because the 3rd horse would have gone on the Horry Street lot, and it was going to require another variance.
I'm referring to your December 22nd letter, 2015. It talked about 3 horses. It didn't go into the 3rd piece of property.
That was before the extension and the...
Sir, I am not arguing with you. I'm simply stating what I have received in the fact sheets.
Okay, it was changed, so I apologize if there was a typo in the letter, but the application is being
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. The chair entertain a motion on the variance.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny application 16-93007 for the same reason, and it's even more obvious because in this case, the facility for horses on this subject property would be closer than 2 existing residential recreational structures. So it doesn't meet criteria number 4.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Bud, second. It's been properly moved and second that we deny the variance application. Do we have any discussion? Seeing, hearing none. Those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. With that, I call for a 10-minute recess. I now call to order resuming the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. I call your attention to application 16-93008, a variance request for a front and side yard setback at 428 Kershaw Place in its zone RS 15. To the city, has this been properly posted?
It has been posted.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
I've had none, no.
Thank you. The board, you have read the staff report, so do we have any questions to the city? No questions to the city? Ms. Robert and Judith Story? You have received copies of the staff report. Do you wish to embellish the report or just respond to and from questions from the board?
We'll take questions.
Any, Pat?
The extension you plan to build will be in front of the existing garage?
That is correct.
You have Tyvek. You've started something. Can you say what that's about? If you just...
Yes, we converted the single-car garage into a walk-in closet. And I'm not really sure why that material is still there, but maybe.
So you actually have a closet in there now, and you weatherized that?
Correct. It's heated and air-conditioned. Garage that used to be there now is a walk-in closet.
Okay, and I assume you have finished flooring?
Carpeted.
Okay. You had me guess. Do you have a building permit yet?
Pat, let me back up just a minute and have the stories read themselves into the minutes, your name and address.
Oh, sorry.
Bob and Judith Story, 428 Kershaw Place.
Thank you. Now we can resume the questions.
You've applied for building permits already?
Yes, I'm looking at Mr. Kelly, our contractor, our builder.
Okay.
Do you want
You
him
don't
to
have to
come
tell me
up
where
and-
you got the answer. He didn't talk to you. Okay,
You want
that's
him to
all.
come up and read himself into the minutes and he can stand beside you?
Yes, I would prefer that.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Will you redirect the question?
I'm Eugene Kelly. I'm a registered residential home contractor, and we did get the permit, and we've already got a CO on that part. Tommy told us to go ahead and weatherproof the front till we could get to this meeting to see if we can get our variance.
Address,
Okay.
address. His
Judy.
address.
Oh, did you give your address?
My address?
Yes.
1962 Wire Road.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes.
Bud?
Mr. and Ms. Story did, based on the staff comments, the, under item number 6, it says that the existing southern side setback does not appear to be detrimental to the adjacent property owner. However, staff has not received any comments from this neighbor. The proposed addition will meet the required front yard setback. Can you comment to anything that your adjacent neighbors might have said for or against your
In fact,
application?
when we applied for the variance, I went next door to the south to meet Sandy Honick, who's our next door neighbor, and to explain what the variance was all about. And at the end of our 20-minute discussion, she agreed that she thought that was a great idea and had her blessing. And I discovered 2 days after that the people living next door, the lady Mary and her son Will, she's the daughter of a good friend of mine I play golf with at Palmetto Golf Club, Joe Spencer. Some of you may know Joe. And he told me on Saturday night, it was Saturday night, we attended a social gathering together, that his daughter, Mary, was all in favor again of what we're doing. So that's the background from our two neighbors.
She is your neighbor to the north of you? Okay.
Yes, Mary.
And Ms. Honick is to the south?
To the
of you?
south, yes.
Okay.
You be careful you don't beat him in a dogfight.
Good.
One question. All right, so the actual plan for the additional space is what? Walk me through what you're trying to accomplish here.
We're doing a 10-foot 6 by 13-foot addition to the front of the garage, extending it straight out. And we're using it for storage. So we took the other garage and made it into a walk-in closet.
All right, so what's the room that's adjacent to what was the garage? Just,
Looks like the living room.
Pardon that?
Adjacent, the bathroom is the master bedroom.
okay, here's your coach truck, I got it, I got it.
The bathroom, then it moves into the walk-in
Closet, and then the additional storage.
The storage area, which,
Okay.
by the way, will be air-conditioned and heated. And nice storage area, trust me.
It'll add to the heated space of the total house.
Unfortunately.
So what you're doing, may I?
Judy.
What you're doing is just coming straight out.
Right.
So even though it does not meet the requirement on the side, so all you're doing, though, is coming straight out. It's not going to be any closer to your neighbor than it was before. Is that correct? And it looked like to me on the plan that the front part of it will not be any further out than the porch area.
The walkway
Okay.
area will not be any further out than that.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions from the board? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application 1693-008. It appears that it meets all the criteria and has the neighbor's approval, and seems like a good addition.
I second.
John?
John, second. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion? And I assume that it be in accordance with the recommendation, staff recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read that, yeah. Yes. With the conditions stated, the proposed one-story addition along the southern property line is granted a setback distance of 5 feet 8 inches for a length of 10 feet 6 inches as conceptually shown in Exhibit B and C. The final order is recorded in the Aiken County RMC office.
Those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. I call your attention to application 16-93009, a variance request for a rear yard setback and reductions in required parking at 170 University Parkway. This is Zone GB. To the city, has this been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
No, sir.
Does the board have any questions of this to the city? No questions? The representative for Nizar Properties.
Good evening. My name is Joe Walker. I live at 323 West Pine Grove Avenue in North Augusta.
I'm Keith Lynn. I'm at 515 Calhoun Street in Johnston, South Carolina.
You have received copies of the staff report. Do you wish to embellish the report or just respond to and from questions?
I embellished the write-up as best I could. I'd like to respond to questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, could you please explain your relationship to Nizar Properties?
We have a contract for purchase to Desire Properties from Augusta Ear, Nose, and Throat.
Wait,
Actually,
you have,
a contract to purchase Ezra Properties, the location, from Petra LLC, which is owned wholly by Augusta Ear, Nose, and Throat, Aiken ENT.
Desire Properties owns the property,
They own it currently, yes, sir.
and you have a contract to buy it.
Yes, sir.
Who are you? For what?
Augusta Ear, Nose, and Throat.
Okay, you're not Petra Medical Property.
I am the manager for Petra Medical Properties also.
Okay, do you have a authorization to represent Nestor Properties?
There was a application for the purposes of us to represent them, I believe, in the package that we.
Yes, sir. We went with that with Mr. Paradise.
Yeah.
And the application was made out, and at it's made out to Nazareth Properties with Joseph M. Walker as representative, and his scroll signature is.
So you have been officially named in writing to represent
That's
Nestor
right.
Properties?
That is correct on that piece of
The
property.
letter, January 11th, 2016 letter
Okay.
in your package.
Now, is the property presently occupied?
No, sir.
And it's not occupied by the group of surgeons who need more space than the property will currently allow?
You're correct. It is not occupied.
I guess I'm confused. We've got an empty property, and a group of surgeons wants to move into it, but it's not large enough for them. So instead of looking for a property that's large enough for them, we want to expand the existing property that you want to buy and move it into the setbacks and allow parking on an outside lot.
Well, first of all, I'm going to go to Keith Lynn, who is the representative, who has done due diligence with realtors to get some property, that was viable, visible, and adjacent near the hospital for these surgeons to operate, and let him talk about the due diligence that they have done to look for properties that would adequately take care of the needs, the present needs and the future needs of these surgeons.
You
Mr.
said
Keith-
adequately suit their needs. It obviously won't because it's not large enough.
Right.
You see my confusion, sir?
No, I see you're not looking forward. I'm a residential builder and also have done commercial building. I have an unlimited contractor's license for this state. Sometimes people buy properties with the idea that if they were renovated, they would meet their purposes. And this is the case in this is the case in this instant. This building will do nicely for these doctors, but the architects say that each doctor needs about 1,400 square feet. The building is about 4,000 square feet. Add 20 feet to an 80-foot building in the back, and you get 5,600 or 5,700. You get your 1,400 per physician. And right now, they're operating at 1,500 square feet around the corner at 74 Physicians Drive, and they are cramped. And they know they are, but they have patients that want to come in and more patients. This group has been here, as you see, for 10 years with one physician.
Where have they been?
Mr. Lynn?
Royal Pavilion, Dr. Gregory Esselman, we've managed his practice, and he has just recently joined our practice along with Dr. Patrick McMiniman. So we've managed them for a number of years now. They've joined our practice, and we're looking at the growth of Aiken. The growth of Aiken means that we need more physicians.
Where are they currently practicing?
They're currently practicing at 74 Physicians Drive.
Another place?
Right.
Okay.
We had to relocate into
Yep.
another facility.
And they want more physicians, so they had to find a larger property.
Since then, we have merged. Since the first of the year, we have merged our practice with their practice. So our due diligence was to find a larger space for all the physicians plus what we foresee is growth into the area to grow. So we started looking at space in and around the Aiken Regional Hospital, which is very limited for a group that's our size. We first looked for what's existing so that we could repurpose possibly what's out there. And then secondly, we would look to build a new facility. Well, property has some restrictions on it in and around the hospital, or it's owned by the hospital. So our proximity would have to be much further out. So we started looking at properties that were vacant, which is, this building happens to be vacant, has been vacant for a period. So we approached the owner of the property and said, hey, look, we like this building, has good storefront, people can find it easy, it's in an area where other businesses are at, other medical businesses are at. So we looked at that space, and it wasn't quite large enough after we did our due diligence of the space. So our suggestion was to maybe come to City of Aiken and ask for a variance, because the owner of the property owns everything around it. So, but it's a particular plat, and based on the plat, we need a larger space. The person we would encroach is the owner of the property now. So our goal was that, hey, here's a building that has good storefront, has a great opportunity for us to be in, and it'll be easy to find by patients, has adequate parking, and we felt that this was a good repurpose of what we could utilize in Aiken, close to the hospital.
Isn't the building next door vacant?
The building next door is not vacant now. The building behind it is vacant, but it doesn't have the storefront nor I guess, the ease of being able to be seen from the roadway. It's important that, you know, for physicians, as you well may know, if you try to find one in the city of Aiken, you do have to go down certain areas and certain roads. They're not centrally located anymore. But what we're trying to do is get adjacent to the hospital to support the hospital needs, because our two doctors that are here are the only two that actually support the hospital. So we wanted them to be close, because there's a lot of times they have to leave during lunch to go attend patients in the hospital.
Okay, another question. With your plan, you're going to be short 8 parking spaces on this particular property, and you plan to use parking spaces at least 8 on an adjoining property, and you say you have permission from the owner there.
Correct.
Would they be willing in contract to alter their deed in order to provide an easement, if that's a correct word, for your perpetual use of their property?
Yes, sir. In our contract of purchase was the cross parking of the property from ours to our neighbors. So that would be, we would be granted that cross parking. Otherwise, you're correct. We do not have adequate parking to house a facility there. But
they would deed that to you for use?
Yes. That was part of the contract for sale.
Thank you.
That's not the same owner. It's not the same owner of that. Okay, that also has this.
Shopping center, the whole thing.
Okay, he's got the whole thing. All right.
Oh.
So it's the same person writing the whole.
Desert property owns all the way from I think it's Edward Jones Investment all the way down to where the old, not the old Lowe's, or I think it was lumber 84, but right in between there was a grocery store. Right. So he owns that entire area right there. So this is one piece of property that was platted out for tax purposes, I guess, as they built it. But he owns the entire property around us.
Does
So
he?
encroachment is on him.
The encroachment is on him, but does he also own the new, I guess, 6-section building behind your building or the boat? So that's a gravel parking lot, so he's got that too?
Yes, sir.
That would be the encroachment onto that gravel parking.
Okay.
We're moving the building back toward there.
Right.
And not my argument, but just the presentation was because there was parking behind there. It's not, I know that, you know, you want to keep a setback so people don't encroach on other people as far as noise and light and safety and green space and landscaping and a lot of things. But this is not going to encroach on any of that because it is actually a curved parking with 10 feet in front of it, which will still be there, and 15 feet left of this property, which is still 25 feet of green space. And there is a elevation difference of about 4 feet. And so this addition is sort of going to be nestled back there. And it's not going to be obstructive to the neighbors, and it's not going to be unreasonably sort of change the use of that 20 feet of land to accommodate 4 good physicians to help patients in Aiken, and they feel like they'd be comfortable.
But your drawings show you're going straight back.
Straight back.
Same width of the building, just straight back.
Straight back.
X number of feet to get your additional square footage.
That's it.
And that building used to be a
Sports therapy.
sports therapy?
Yes.
Been there, done that.
Okay, okay. And it's been vacant for, any idea how long?
You know, they went in, I think in 2005, and they didn't stay there very long. It's been vacant for, 6 or 7 years, actually.
Well, I had an accident in 2011, so they were there then. And how soon after that they moved, I have no idea. Yeah.
I know that they've been out of the building.
Yeah.
So what's the plan for the back of the building? In other words, are there going to be egress? I mean, walk me through what the new back of the building is supposed to be for.
The new back of the building will be the same as it is today.
Okay, just
There'll
simply
be
the rear of the-
There'll be 2 air conditioners back there. There'll be a walkway so you'll have a back door, but it's not for patients or anybody, and it's not even for nurses, because the parking will be in the front and to the side. It's there for emergencies.
Just emergency egress, right?
Brendan, I think you had the same question that I have. Because in the staff report, they talk in terms of you're going to design this to Exhibit B. And I find that my question when I saw the building, I said, where's the dumpster? And Exhibit E lays everything out. So I wonder if we have the wrong exhibit in the staff report that the building will be designed to.
Here's what, I don't know what, I gave all
That's B, that's Exhibit B.
Okay, now you want to know where the dumpster is?
Yes.
To the right side of the building. We're not taking those,
I-
don't count those 2 parking spaces.
Yeah,
But to the right side of the building.
that's shown on Exhibit E, which is the planning, but it shows the dumpster and the driveway, their pad and everything for the dumpster.
It's there.
Yeah.
And there's also an emergency control on that side.
Right.
And you can also let patients in that might be.
Ambulatory, okay.
Exhibit E, if I'm not mistaken, Exhibit E is on, Paul, if you'll scroll on up a little bit, I'm looking for Exhibit E. Is that it?
Yeah.
That's Exhibit E. Now, is that the existing?
No.
Is that the existing building there, or does that also show the, building addition?
No, that's the existing building.
Okay.
We're not going any further to the widest of the left.
Right. Okay. This was the set of plans that they had when they initially built it back in 2000, I can't read the writing, 2003 or 2 or 3, okay.
Will the patient entrance be to the front?
Be in the front.
Strictly. So any parking would likely happen to the north and not in the,
There is parking, the way we've always done medical practices, we never park, none of our employees ever park in front of the building. We want to make it patient-friendly, easy access.
I'm just thinking if I were a business behind you and your patients and/or staff were parking in my store's parking places, that might be a problem. But if they'll likely park to the north, and which is closest.
Which is virtually no parking at all. None of the business should come out that far. So we will utilize that space as soon as.
One other question. You have some trees coming along, rather nice trees in the back. Would they be disturbed at all?
I don't anticipate any changes to the landscape of the building, or landscape around the building. Matter of fact, I think we met adequately for the green space that we need to keep. So, if anything, you want to make it pretty. You want to make it attractive.
That tree line won't be,
Okay.
that's 45 feet right there, taking 20.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
That,
Have you inquired with the owner of the neighboring property the possibility of purchasing a portion of his lot to give you adequate space for the expansion and the parking spaces?
In our initial discussion with him was having cross parking because we were looking at being, neighbors. We're going to be neighbors now and in the future.
My question?
Let me answer that.
Yeah, I wish somebody would.
All right, I'm going to answer it directly. There's so many, I measured it, there's so many square feet to those 6 birdhouses in the back. They come up to exactly 39 parking spaces that the code says that they need in order to park the cars should anybody ever move back there. They got 39 parking spaces.
Okay, so
you would
your 8
encroach
from
and
their
encroach.
39 makes them 8 short.
Pardon?
Your 8 from their 39 makes them 8 short.
But I say it would be an encroachment on encroachment. But it's 7, it's not 8. And
Between the two of you, you're going to be 8 parking spaces short, correct?
no, 7.
Huh?
16 from 23 is 7. It needs 23 parking spaces.
Yeah, they were
Their new addition.
only ever 7 short, not 8. You were off 1.
Oh, there's 7, okay,
spaces,
between the
yeah.
two of you, you're 7 parking spaces short.
right.
Not between, who's the other person? Between Keith and I? Or between us and the one in back? No, they're
Yes.
not short. They have exactly the number of parking
They
spaces.
will be short if you use 7 of their parking spaces. Huh?
We're not using theirs. We're going north, which means we're going toward the hospital, which means that we're going to
East. They're going
these
east,
parking spaces
no, west.
right here. Right here.
And they're willing to let you use their parking spaces.
It's in the contract.
Okay. Have you inquired with them regarding purchasing some of that space in order to have more parking space?
They have, that is 59,000 square foot shopping center.
Hey, I know.
It requires 4 parking places.
To your answer, no, we have not.
No, you have not.
We have not.
Thank you. Thank you.
But there
Seemed like a
is,
simple
there
question,
is
didn't
an
it?
easement. There is, as part of the contract, there is an easement that will be granted for you all to use the 7 spaces that are across the street to the north toward the hospital for your use. The gravel parking lot in the back is not paved, it's not striped, it's not anything right now, but according to what you say, and that's not part of the issue here, but those spaces back there are dedicated to that new building that's in place that I call it a 6-section building.
yeah.
It's 6 birdhouses or whatever you say, but that gravel area is dedicated to that new building. And you're not in any way going to utilize any of those. You're just going to utilize what's already there.
That's right.
Through an easement.
We think it would be unsafe for somebody to park back there and try to walk down that grass.
I would agree with
Yeah, I
you.
agree.
So the easement will, I'm assuming will clearly identify the 7 spots that are to be procured and marked for Augusta, ear, nose, and throat, whatever the new business.
We can do
Aiken,
that.
yeah.
We can write it into the actual what do you call, deed of the property.
Personally, I like the idea of your repurposing an existing building that's unoccupied, that does have good road frontage, that is visible, and not going out and yet clearing another place and parking and so forth. You're utilizing what you have now, both in front of the building as well as to the side of the building, to the north of the building, which makes absolutely, in my opinion, good sense.
Me too.
Do we have any further questions from the board? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the variance request final call? Seeing here none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chair, I will attempt to make a motion that this board grant a variance to allow a reduction in the required rear setback to 15 feet and to allow the parking ration to be reduced by 7 parking places. The approval would be to allow a 15-foot rear yard setback as conceptually shown in Exhibit B, a parking easement for a minimum of 7 parking spaces on the adjacent shopping center to the north for not less than 20 years, to be approved by the planning director and recorded in the Aiken County RMC office within 90 days. The variance will run with the land, and the final order be recorded at the Aiken County RMC office.
I second that.
Been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion?
Well, I would like to say that as I look through the criteria, I have to struggle getting through some of them purely because a lot of these conditions are a direct result of the applicant's own action of buying a property that's not big enough for them. Having said that, however, I think there are compelling reason for exception in that the immediate neighbors that would be or could be impacted are all either vacant or unused and all owned by the same owner who's willing to rewrite and get creative to make this thing work. And I think it is encouraging that a vacant piece of commercial property in this town is trying to get repurposed for a use. And I think it's compelling that to have doctors close to the hospital kind of mitigates their ability to go too far away and look for more other property that's a little bit a better match as it stands now. So
I can reflect on Brendan's presentation. You can certainly see the logic of wanting to be in this particular location. And it's the importance of this location, I think, that's the motivation for this. And we've got to ask ourselves how this meets the criteria. The property itself is not unusual. As far as criteria 1 and 2 go, this is a normal lot with a building that was built within the setbacks with the adequate number of parking spaces per the plan. It's simply not a large enough lot and a large enough building. And, it's the wrong choice. It's a location that makes this attractive. I'm not saying that, this isn't, all these things aren't compromised with the willingness of the owner of the property to allow them to meet the requirements for the parking spaces next door. But I've got to struggle with the fact that this simply doesn't meet the criteria. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Certainly the results of the actions of the applicant as a purchaser and the current owner. So although this all works, I'm charged with making a decision as a member of this board on whether or not we grant variances for applications that meet the criteria. And I simply can't see where it meets the criteria.
I guess I've struggled with this one for the first time. I've struggled with trying to get a decision, mainly because I was always interested in ear, eye, nose, and throat, and I wanted to be a doctor, so I'm partial there.
I also have a problem saying that, Bill.
I know, but I'm looking at a need that can be addressed to the city versus 7 parking spaces.
Well, also, I'm looking at Bud's assessment is that they're taking, even though it's a small building, they're taking that and repurposing it, which adds to our community. So I certainly think there are extraordinary conditions to that because it's too small and they've adjusted to that. It would unreasonably restrict them, especially with the parking, if they didn't get the access to the adjacent parking. So, and I think that even that it's not the result of their own actions. The property is what it is, and it needs to, like I say, like Bud was saying, we don't need to destroy more trees and whatever to build somebody to build a grand building when we've got something right here on the property close to the hospital.
Well, the question is how the restrictions, how the ordinances without the variance, the property is unreasonably restricted as far as use. Yeah, it's unreasonably restricted for something that requires more space. It's not unreasonably restricted for something that meets the design, which, you know, somebody put in a building that was about a half acre with, you know, that was within the setbacks with the required number of parking spaces. It meets the use of something that needs that, not more space than that, quite adequately.
I guess when you look at it that way, but it doesn't meet the requirements of the people who want to move there.
Yeah, it doesn't meet the requirements of a lot of things that need more space.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for filling commercial space that's unused.
Right.
I'm all for, you know, promoting business. I'm all for more healthcare practitioners and things in that corridor. But I'm also looking to see how this meets the criteria, and I'm stumped.
Let me ask you a question to the city, or maybe the chairman wants to. Does the effective easement of 7 parking spots not effectively mitigate that as a exception that we're, in other words, they're presenting the fact that they've got the 7 spots they need for the increased space?
With the easement, I'd say it does, but they're also looking to move 5 feet into the setback, and I'm looking for rationale for granting that.
It still leaves a setback issue, but we were initially dealing with needing parking spots. I mean, is that what is this? Does our city advisor have an opinion on that?
I would think that the easement would mitigate the 7 parking spots.
Okay.
If there is no curb between, there is a curb along the side of the road, and that curb, it need to be a curb cut to make it easier to get from one to the other and back and forth. That's what bothered me. The curb cut is not there in order to have that exit or that egress between the 2 parking lots.
I mean, I guess where I'm at is, I mean, it's a real stretch for all these exceptions, but if I'm simply looking at an easement to a vacant lot by the common owner, you know, I can get more creative in my way around some of the criteria.
That's the building.
So
This is the parking.
Well, his parking right in front too.
You got
There's
some,
the
but
curb.
the other 7 spots.
I mean, if this were another business impacted by the easement, different owner, I mean, I think that's an unfair burden for a space that's right now not currently suited. But this is all one big kind of planned commercial area that the one owner's got control of everything, and it's just a matter of him. I got a completely vacant building back here with a gravel parking lot. If you need 10 feet of that, technically the setback's not what it used to be, but there's nobody impacted behind there for me at this point. Nor do I think at this point would there be a major impact to that. But if I got to go fishing for parking spots and we're granting an exception from the fact that we're saying that they're allowed to have that without the 7 parking spots, then that becomes too big of a reach for me. If we're saying that the easement effectively mitigates that as really a variance that we're ruling on here, I'd like to see an abandoned commercial building filled
I would too.
with 4 doctors in it.
Mr. Chair, to address the issue of accessibility or the ease of accessibility from the 7 parking spaces to the north into the building so that the pedestrian, once he or she gets out of her car and becomes a pedestrian, they know where to cross.
Yeah.
Okay, would you, I guess, would you,
You can add that to the motion.
would you be willing, that, well, not you, I would like to see that and add that to the motion I made, that the proper curb cut be made and accessibility made to your building so that there's no question where the staff, if you say that staff parking, that they know to take that route to get into your building. If they're going to be coming in from the front door, or I assume they'll be coming in from the front also.
I think if we're going to take testimony from the applicant again, we ought to bring him up, you know.
Okay.
This is not procedure. You know, you're negotiating with the applicant while we've got a motion on the floor, and he's not even giving testimony.
Okay.
So what do we do?
He's right.
He is, okay, so what's the
Bring him
proper?
up to the podium.
As part of the discussion, would you like to address that issue with the applicant?
Yes.
I will call him back up.
Thank you, Pat, sorry.
Now you may redirect your question.
Okay, I'll direct my question again to the applicant. In light of the 7 parking spaces needed for your building that will be utilized, say, for staff parking, are you willing to put in a curb cut and otherwise concrete walkway that would allow direct access to the building for those who park in those 7 parking places?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But actually, Bud, that is going to be for employees.
Correct.
That's all right.
Correct. But I'm just saying, in light of what the chairman has
It would be
indicated
for
in here.
employees and patients, patients You'll fill up certain places, they're gonna park next place. So, yes, it makes good sense to make an adequate walkway so for their safety and for our employees.
I think the whole thing is about, starts with safety.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with their testimony, do I make an amendment to the motion that proper curb cut and walkway be placed for the 7 spaces on the north end of this site to allow direct access to the building and without any question of where to walk and enhance safety.
Was it also your intention to label that as staff parking?
Well, I've just heard
I
what
thought
they
that was
said that
part
it was
of your
staff
intention.
parking. Yeah, yes, that was part of my discussion for staff parking. Now, that's what you had indicated, excuse me, I'm doing it again, what I'm not supposed to do.
But we have to see, is that okay with the second maker?
Okay.
That would be an addendum to the motion. Do we have any further discussion? Those in favor of the modified motion show by raising the right hand. Those opposed, same sign. 5-1, the motion is passed. I call your attention to application 16-93010, a variance request for a rear yard setback fronting street at 427 Fabian Drive in the Zone GB. Again, to the city, has this been properly posted?
It has been posted.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
None that I'm aware of.
Thank you. The board has reviewed the staff reports. Do we have any questions to the city?
I have a question for the city.
I'll go with John. John first.
Is the traffic flow and control at that intersection under the purview of the city or the state Department of Transportation?
I'm
Stop
sorry, I'm not
signs.
gonna be able to answer. I'm not sure. That was the connector road that the city put in. I'm thinking it's city maintained.
I think it's all city road.
I believe it is a city road.
That connects to the county road, Doherty Road, yes.
That was part of my question. The other part was, have you personally inspected that intersection and the intrusion we're talking about here as far as the setback?
I have looked at it, yes, sir.
And there's no way that either of those loading docks are going to interfere, entering them or leaving them, with the flow of traffic on Pawnee or Fabian?
No, sir, I don't, but again, that's opinion, but I
Well,
don't think it will.
Yeah, one thing I couldn't pinpoint precisely is the exact location of both of those loading docks. I wish it could have been marked. I mean, I had to say, I think it's right here. That's my difficulty with this. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions to the city? If not, Brad?
Good evening. One point I wanted to mention.
Read yourself into the minutes.
I'm
please.
Brad Bonney. I'm representing KRG Aiken Hitchcock LLC, the applicant and
your
owner of the building.
Your address?
My address?
Or your firm's address?
Firm address is 759 Richland Avenue West.
Thank you.
Reading the project description and then the conclusion, the proposed loading dock will be, this last sentence in the project description, proposed loading dock will be, says 20.92 feet from the property line. I think it's 20.84. And I know that's
I'm gonna go out and measure.
I know that's a minute amount, but I wanted to try and be, I believe that should be 20.84, based on what I can see. And Mr. Patinelli, I believe, I don't know if you could see on this site layout, but we tried to show exactly where there's the existing, yeah, Paula's going around the loading dock that we wish to add. And then the one on the right was the existing loading dock. It's going to be in substantially the same footprint. So I apologize, it wasn't marked at the actual site showing where everything is, but I believe on that schematic, it shows it best exactly the locations and then where they are within the setbacks.
So aside from the intrusion into the setback by some, how many feet? Well, whatever it is, the flow of trucking into and out will be quite normal.
Yes, in fact, there's a curb all along Pawnee Drive that separates this back loading area from Pawnee Drive. Exactly, that's where it is, where the cursor's showing. So there won't even be, there's an exact separation between any trucks coming in for loading and unloading, and then the traffic along Pawnee. And then to show you.
And this will all be parallel?
Parallel.
Parallel to the loading dock? In other words, what I'm concerned at is at what angle will they approach the loading dock?
There is a driveway here.
Yeah.
That's existing. They would come in around this area, and then they could access the loading area. Then there's a cut here. They could leave right through there, or vice versa, and then they could continue on this way. So there's not a section where they have to do any kind of massive turning.
Okay, I guess, let me ask it another. What will be the direction of the trucks as they park at the loading dock?
We have a truck drawn here that shows, so if I'm understanding your question, so if the truck wants to drive in this way and back into this loading dock, I believe is how they'll access that one. This one, same thing, drive in, back into the loading dock.
Okay.
Access it this way. Wouldn't be accessed from the outside.
So they won't be backing in perpendicular to the road?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Yes, you're correct. It would all be parallel in how they're maneuvering.
I was concerned with the need, the closeness to the road is in order to approach the dock, perpendicular to the building, if that was in fact the direction that they were going to approach the loading dock. I'm clear now.
I apologize. I didn't get it right off. I don't want to take up much of your time. I presume you've all read through the criteria and what we've set out. I mainly want to keep my comments to the fact that this situation wasn't created by the applicant. It was done in conjunction with the city to create this road to actually help traffic in the area. So it was done in good graces with the city to try and help the community. Also, this property, if you're aware of it, originally was a goodies building, I believe, way back. Right. It was a gym for a while. Most recently, which I think it's been over a year since it's been occupied, I think it was Achieve Fitness, which was a gym. South Aiken PT or some physical therapist, I think, was in there for a little bit too. Consequently, the loading docks haven't been utilized for years. So that's probably one reason why they've not been updated, they've not been dealt with, and they haven't been an issue with Pawnee Drive in all that time. Now the owners are trying to attract tenants for the property. They have a current tenant that is ready to move in to one side of the building, but it is contingent on a loading dock that is grade level and meets with their approval to be able to load what they need in there. It has to be covered because they have to keep items dry. So this tenant is actually contingent on being able to repurpose the loading dock on the right side of the building, if you're looking at this picture. So it's imperative that we be able to try and have this loading dock placed there. The one on the left would service the rest of the building, which applicant will continue to try and locate a tenant. Again, for this size building, for this type of commercial activity and retail, it is now fairly imperative that you have a loading dock that's useful and can be utilized for products. So without a loading dock on that side, for that side of the building, it's going to be very limited in who they can bring in to occupy that side of the building. Again, going through the criteria, again, I'm sure you've read it, but I believe we meet all 6 criteria. Obviously, there's exceptional conditions pertaining to this property because of the fact that the rear of a commercial retail building is actually facing a public road, which is very unusual. They don't apply to the other properties in here, the Academy Sports, the rest of the buildings there. As you can see, Pawnee heads off, setback goes away. It's not affecting any other of the properties there. This is the only building that's being affected by this setback issue. We also, on the, I mentioned the restriction, obviously, if we can't have the loading docks repurposed as we need them, then it's going to severely restrict the use of the property. Again, the applicant, while the original or the prior owner, our owner, did actually help to create Pawnee Drive, again, it was not the intention to cause the issue that it is with the loading docks. It wasn't causing an issue to the prior occupants of that property, but it would obviously be a major issue for us now. And then the last 2, the property is not, 5 and 6, granting the variance not substantially conflict with the comprehensive plan. That area is commercial. There's nothing there. There is a daycare back there on the far side of Pawnee Drive, which is why you see the unusual change in the setbacks. There had been an easement area back there for the playground, so they had pushed everything over. The prior owners of the property went ahead and deeded, when they deeded Pawnee Drive, they deeded sections over there, so that's why you're seeing the unusual shift in the setback because of this prior existing easement area for the playground that is with the daycare on the far side of Pawnee and down the road.
Brad, what is that gray building that's across the street? There's some pipe coming out, and then there's a kind of gray or greenish building across it. What is that?
Across Pawnee?
Yeah. To the east. Where Pawnee takes that odd shape, there is an old gray building sitting over there.
I believe there's a warehouse over there, but I don't know that we have any schematics that show the building you're talking about. There's a warehouse, I believe, back there next to the detention pond.
Yes.
I think it's currently for sale. I don't know what the use is, but I believe it's a warehouse. It's not owned by my client, and I'm not certain.
And there's some strange looking big pipes coming up out of the ground to the south of it.
Really, I was not aware of that. I don't know what that is, but I believe it is for sale, whoever owns it.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, go ahead.
And then if you have driven back there, which obviously Dr. Ogletree has, that area is not going to be harmed. There's nothing, it's all commercial. There's a big warehouse. You've seen some pipes coming out of it. You've got the detention pond there. There's nothing in that area that's going to cause any or be harmed by the fact that we are working into this setback or asking to be able to move into the setback. So in conclusion, really, I think the criteria speaks for itself. I think we meet all the requirements. It would be very helpful to be able to have the additional loading dock, because we won't be able to find many tenants without it, it's imperative to be able to repurpose the current loading dock, because the tenant quite literally is contingent on this repurposing of the loading dock before they'll come. So I certainly urge you to please vote in favor of this variance, and if you have any questions, be happy to answer.
Question, go ahead, Bud.
Brad, the two loading docks, can they handle two trucks, a truck at one loading dock and a truck at the other loading dock at the same time?
Hi, Tony Halsey, representing KRG Aiken Hitchcock. Excuse me. Address is 30 South Meridian Street, Indianapolis, Indiana. We had an engineer draw some with an auto turn. It's an AutoCAD program you can run trucks through. Right. And so, yeah, they can get by there, and then they back up. And if there's a truck at each dock at the same time, there would be a 20-foot gap or something. They wouldn't quite cover the building, so there's room for them to back in. Yeah.
Okay. The existing loading dock is going to be removed and then reconfigured, similar to what the new one's going to be like? In other words, they'll be pretty much identical to one another?
The existing dock, as you know, is elevated and it dives down to grade, so it'll be taken out and basically just put in at grade, just a flat at grade drive with a covered canopy over it that extends roughly to about the same spot that the existing canopy does. It'll extend maybe another foot farther, and then there'll be a scissor lift underneath to go up and access the trucks and down.
Okay. The scissor lift would be
under the canopy.
Under the canopy, flush with the grade. Is that right? It'd go up and
just up
it'll
and
get down into a pit where it's all flush.
Yeah, or however they built them. So.
Mr. Chairman, the only concern I have on this is the preciseness of the measurements. When I see .84 or .92, maybe we're not positive which one it is, and 6 feet 4 inches, I'd rather give a portion of an inch rather than err in the interest of too much accuracy.
Yeah, that's fine. That's an engineer. I mean, we have to hire a civil engineer to do this, so they have a survey.
Who did the measurements?
The civil engineer.
I'm sorry?
Civil engineer, Carlisle and Associates, I think they're out of Columbia.
Well, I just voiced that to my fellow board members.
Okay.
Do they have a survey of the building? They measure that. But you're probably right. It's not accurate to the 100th of a foot for sure.
I mean, I'd rather go with 20 feet and 6 feet.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I understand.
I mean, I think we're giving you part of an inch if we did that, rather than taking away a part of an inch, correct?
Yeah.
I was just I didn't want there to be any accuracies or mistakes, and I was just trying to line it up with what our schematics had showed. But
that's fair.
Certainly fair.
I just throw in my 2 cents.
Okay.
Well, these are schematics. They're not engineered drawings. It's utilized for installation. Okay, so.
Right, I have those available too.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Is the loading dock depth standard, or by code, does it have to be so deep?
You say depth, you mean?
From the back of the building toward Pony Drive. No, the length, the depth, like that.
We base that, that's pretty standard. It varies somewhat, but it needs to be big enough for a semi to, occupy that space. And we base that off of, the tenant on the south side of the building here is Petco, so we base that off of Petco standards for width.
My only concern is the stop sign at that intersection, that the loading dock would block view looking up Pawnee Drive. And I went there and I stopped at the stop sign, and you can barely see around where the loading dock would be, but you can see around. And that's the only concern I would have, and have you taken that into consideration?
Which stop sign going
So
from
the
the
stop
property
sign
on?
right there at the corner.
Probably a stop sign.
Come off the edge of the loading dock over to the road, and it's about right in there, a little bit up, yes.
From the parking lot.
So you, stop, okay. So you're concerned about blocking traffic, like view from what
Blocking
direction?
view of oncoming traffic at the stop sign.
On Pawnee? Or from the drive
A
back
view
behind?
looking up Pawnee, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
In other words, would a guy trying to get on Pawnee be able to look right up Pawnee as he wanted to get out onto Pawnee if there was a truck backed into that immediate dock there? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and
okay.
as it stands now, you can see, but barely.
Okay, I guess I hadn't taken that into account. It looks to me like he would be past the truck, that he'd be
Yeah.
able to see Pawnee.
So do
But
they
I'm
need to
just-
move the stop sign?
They could move the stop sign.
Yeah, I mean, you want it to move it like closer to Pawnee Drive, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
but then you
yeah.
get into the driveway of going in.
Yeah.
You want the stop sign beyond the loading
Whatever,
dock.
as far out as you can get that stop sign, that you would optimize the safety of traffic.
We would certainly work
Sure,
with the city.
we could-
And I think, earlier you asked whether it was city or state. I've got to believe this is a city road.
I can't believe that's.
It's a city road.
It's city. I got a text from the previous person that said here, it's city.
It's city.
I sure know the city paid for it, so.
I'd have the city look at it and see if there's a safer spot closer to the intersection.
And I can talk to the engineer about that. I mean, we can let the stop sign move closer to the road, that's fine.
Well, I think a stop sign and an accompanying stop sign and an accompanying stop line
Yeah.
would direct the motorist to that point. The stop sign's there, he's there, and you got the sight distance in both directions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would resolve the issue, any issue that has been expressed, safety issue.
But final question from me, and not to beat a dead horse, but Board Member Coward brought up a good point about two 53-footers back there unloading. What's the reference to this traffic study or simulation that your engineers have done to? Is that something that should be submitted to the city? I mean, there's got to be some semblance of, you got two massive 53-foot trailers back there simultaneously loading and unloading, that there's technically enough space to do it. I mean, I'm sure there is.
Yeah,
but
I mean-
there should be some evidence of that.
I could give you an exhibit that shows them back there, or even if it were a problem, we could have the tenants load at different times of the day. You know, we work out issues like
Okay.
that all the time.
Okay.
But if there were two trucks, the one on this side would stop about right here. So you've got, about right there, just before this utility room. So you've got at least 40 feet. Those are 67-foot trucks, which is a standard 53-foot trailer.
Yeah.
There might be another exhibit.
Yeah, here.
I think it was our exhibit A1.
Oh, well, here, this is what happened. We originally thought it was a 25-foot setback. So we thought that way, and we thought that since it was, that was probably 36. When the engineer redid it, it didn't show both.
Yeah, I couldn't hardly even see, I didn't even take that as a truck there.
Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
So my
okay.
apologies. So
Okay.
You will pass that around.
That's a truck.
Got them staged in there.
Originally, we had believed that it was a 25-foot setback, and Mr. Paradise informed us last week it was a 30-foot. Our original, not schematic, picture drawing of this setback with the 25-foot had both trucks shown in there, and I think that's what's passing
Yeah,
around.
ours didn't really show that.
Okay.
The engineer asked him to redo the exhibit, and he just left the
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully that gives you some indication of the,
Right. Yeah.
what it would be with 2 trucks in there.
Where'd that one come from?
That belongs to him.
Okay. Do we have additional questions from the board? Thank you. Final call, do we have others to speak to the variance request?
Thank you.
The chair will now entertain a motion so we can end a period of discussion.
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman,
Pat?
to grant application 16-93010. Specifically, the Board of Appeal will grant a front setback of 20 feet to allow a covered loading dock on the rear of the southern end of unit number 251, and to allow a 6-foot setback for a covered loading dock on the rear of the northern end of Unit 251 of Hitchcock Plaza, located on Fabian Drive, as conceptually shown in Exhibit A. The variance will run with the land. Final order to be recorded with the Aiken County RMC office. Excuse me. Running out of voice.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion?
Should there be, again, should there be any exhibit required from the applicant with regards to the configuration of the trucks and in terms of the submission to the city? And should the city be, at least be looking at their egress and ingress and in and out of these spots on the Pawnee?
Well,
These are big rigs. I mean, I'm assuming it's all workable, but it's certainly beyond our scope. And we're just assuming that they're going from loading docks that were seldom used to now 2 with 53 footers. Just getting in and, can egress be made comfortably and easily both ways and in and out? And
I was just shown an exhibit that showed miniature trucks entering and exiting it wasn't on my exhibit, but was that what the city's exhibit?
Is that what you're saying? That's when you
no,
just saw
that was submitted by them.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying, has anyone from the city even weighed in on, from a traffic?
Well, I would suggest that we use that mark and mark it as an exhibit, because the exhibit referred to in the staff report, Exhibit A is a letter and not a drawing. And would you have that marked as an exhibit, which will be incorporated into the motion?
This is Exhibit A1. It shows this.
A1, okay.
You have that marked as A1, it just, the trucks you show on that don't show on our exhibit.
Right.
What happened, this was originally submitted when we thought it was a 25-foot setback, and that's what it shows. And we swapped them out with the 30-foot, which I think is, and in the rush to get the change on it last week, I think that's where the truck got left off. But I can leave this with you, and it can be.
If you, either that or supply a copy so it could become part of the permanent record.
Become part of the minutes, yeah.
I can supply an accurate copy of it.
Thank you.
And
Have they read that, and I'll supply an accurate one with the proper setback. 'Cause that
Okay.
one's got the-
All right. Now, do we have any further discussion?
Does that satisfy you, Brendan, or are you concerned with how they enter and exit the road?
Yeah, I mean, it went a little beyond that, but I just didn't know if anyone from the city should actually weigh in on what could obviously be increased large truck traffic within 25 feet of Pawnee. I mean, again, I don't anticipate there being a problem, but I certainly can't make a great judgment on that.
We will be filing building plans with the Building and Engineering Department, following this. Engineered plans that will be reviewed by Mike and in the engineering department.
In other words, what's been submitted, I get two 53-foot trailers back into docks, there's room to do that. But there's still egress in and out of those spots.
Keep in mind, there are still trucks coming in and out of Academy Sports that same drive right now.
Yeah, they're coming,
Sports has got a lot of trucks back there.
yeah.
But can they make that turn, that,
You may have one coming
I mean, that's a very
in and
sharp
around a
turn.
truck and having to turn out and onto Pawnee.
Here's one engineer did, and I can show it to you. That isn't good, but how we'll ultimately do it.
Yeah, I guess that's my point. Is there somebody on the city end looking at that from a, I'm not qualified to.
The concern about just making the turn into where the loading area is, or is it a concern of just the traffic on Pawnee? Because I understand, I think I
I don't have
understand.
traffic, I don't have concern about traffic on Pawnee. I can count that on two hands probably in the better part of a day. It's just getting trucks in and out and around.
I wouldn't, and I could be completely wrong. I'm not sure if that's the purview, because it is on our property or private property. It's, if a trucker isn't going to be able to get in there, he's going to tell us, well, we can't do it. And I'm not sure if that's the city's responsibility even to have to determine whether a truck can make that turn into there. And obviously,
It seems to me if we're approving a variance to allow this building to have two loading docks inside an easement to a road, that some sort of logistical analysis on getting a truck in and out of there should be done on the city's part, to me. And that's just my opinion, but I mean, I just throw that out for discussion. Don't want to beat it to death. I'm on record, I'm on record with it.
Sir, would it be suitable then to amend the motion that we direct the city to review, in their design review process?
Well, they're certainly gonna, they have another exhibit to submit. And
Right.
then that at least,
But we
at least
direct the
go
city
to.
to look at that,
Right.
look at that
I
turning,
think so.
turning radii or
I don't anticipate any
safety.
problem. I think it will work. I just.
We know
Yeah.
the engineer, or we're not gonna build a truck.
Well,
We're putting
Yeah, quick,
$1 million bucks into this thing, we're not gonna build a truck dock that doesn't, can't have a truck into it.
You wouldn't think. You wouldn't think.
a question.
You wouldn't think that's so.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want to amend the motion, the city to examine, the engineering department, I'm sure will look at it.
This is still
A
part
truck
of the
at the
discussion.
northern, at the northern dock will exit going south, correct?
Yeah.
correct.
And I think the main concern is the truck at the southern
Southern,
loading dock proceeding north, making the turn onto Pawnee. Is that,
Correct.
that's your concern?
That would be the immediate one I would want at least
Yeah.
somebody to noodle through.
Looks like a tough one, but.
Yeah.
It was like, certainly not, they wouldn't go south on Pawnee. They would probably go north on Pawnee.
I mean, if you look at the Academy Road, or the Academy Sports deal, that's easy. They're coming from back, making that gentle sweep, and they can stage the full length of a 53-footer trying to get onto Pawnee either way if there was traffic. You could have a guy straddled halfway in the parking lot. You know, 53 feet, that's a lot to get around a corner, but again, I'm not a truck driver. Just saying, I'm sure it works. I'm sure your engineers will design it. I just think it should be something submitted for somebody a little more skilled than I am to at least take a look at it.
I would assume since the dock was existing there for many years that they must have had, if it was
You'd think?
ever utilized, which again, as I mentioned, it's been many years since there's been probably a
But are
tenant
you-
that's really needed
But
it.
you're kicking that further out, correct?
No, it's the same, it would.
Okay.
There was a dock where on the south end, there is one there now.
Okay.
The truck would be sitting in the same spot.
Yeah, he'd be the same spot.
He'd be the same.
And pointed in the direction that we're talking about.
Yeah, pointed in the direction that you're concerned about has been the way that the building
Okay.
has existed since it's been built.
at this point, I'm going to call the meeting back to order.
Yes.
We have a motion on the floor.
All right.
Any further discussion? Those,
So we decided to make no further condition on that, or?
no, they're going to add submit another exhibit
Okay,
showing the
Okay.
drawings and the truck.
I'm good.
And I think we've discussed it to death, so I don't think we need any further discussion.
With that, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Mike, you make them aware of which exhibit you need to include in the final package.
Paula has it.
You guys have given us this copy, so this is the exhibit.
I'm going to revise.
He can revise that one.
That because this one still shows a 25-foot setback.
I see.
I'll just have to have that changed, and I'll send it over to us.
Yeah, yeah, let me do that.
Okay, I call your attention to application 16-93011, a variance request for a side yard setback fronting a street at 507 Coker Spring Road Southeast in the zone RSS. To the city, has this been properly posted?
Yes, sir, it has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
No, sir, I've received none.
Thank you. The board, you have reviewed the staff report. Do you have any questions of the city? Mr. Hanna?
I'm Samuel Bennett. I'm representing Mr. Hanna, the agent, and got the
Your address, please.
package.
Address.
516 Joseph Hoffman, Aiken.
Thank you. Do you wish to just respond to and from questions from the board, or you wish to embellish the staff report?
I can embellish just a tad bit. Basically, what we're doing is going to be renovating the garage. It's a single-car garage now that you can probably see in your packet, to make it a two-car garage. With us doing that, we're increasing, the gable is going to be raised. Thusly, we're asking for that 2 additional feet in the back that you'll see in the packet, mainly because we've got to get proper runoff off the roof. But the 2 feet you'll see on, Ben Christensen did the property line off the setback. And right now, I think before the property, we don't really know when it actually is encroached. It doesn't meet the 10-foot minimum now, and I don't think it never did and when Mr. Hanna bought the property. But we were at 8 feet presently, and we're going to, we would request that we get the 7-foot 4-inch variance.
Going off the back of the
Very
garage.
back corner. It's a very, the corner, I can give exhibit.
C.
C, let's see.
I'm looking at Exhibit B, it appears that. Yeah, right, okay. Okay.
Oh.
This is an RSS lot.
Yes, sir.
And of course, the required setback is 50 feet.
Yes, sir.
We have a number of RSS lots that they're RSS because of their location in the Horse District, or in this case, Coker Springs Road and its access to the to Hitchcock Woods, and that's why it's RSS, not RS. But what is the current setback on that side of the house?
Currently is, on that corner is 8 feet, or we're at 8 feet. I think required setback is 10 feet.
Yep, there have been 2
It's not
variances
12
on the
feet
house.
currently?
Sir?
It's not 12 feet from the property line?
No, sir.
No.
No, it's 8 feet, and you're asking for 7.5?
7.4.
7.4.
Losing 8 inches,
8 inches, yes.
Okay.
8 more inches.
And we're asking for 8
currently
more
at.
inches,
Okay.
just right off that corner. And at that lot, I don't know if you guys, if you went there, it runs. Ben and I tried to stretch our tape to get it as far as we can, but I think that's from the center of that wall, the brick wall, is what he's measuring.
Our rationale in cases of these, this lot, like the lots that are on Fermata Place that were rezoned, is to basically call for the RS setback, which is 10 feet. So that's my usual rationale. We say 7 feet is the setback that should be for this lot, because it really should be RS.
Right.
Rather than RSS. But you're moving another couple feet into the setback.
We're moving 8 inches into, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board? I did notice the wall was cracking.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ogletree, we did look at that on that outside.
Yes.
Ben and I looked at it.
On the Third Avenue side.
We were trying to figure out something maybe we could probably to address that. We think it's just a matter of time.
Cracking right at the tree.
Do we have any further questions from the board? Thank you. Final call, do we have others to speak to the variance request? Seeing here none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can end our period of discussion.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Judy?
I move that we accept application number 16-93011 with the following conditions: that approval to allow for a 7.5-foot front yard setback from Third Avenue Southwest as conceptually shown on Exhibit B. The variance will run with the land, and the final order is recorded in the Aiken County RMC office. Like I say, it's meets all the criteria as it has done the other 2 or 3 times it's been here.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is approved unanimously. With that, the chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I so move.
We stand adjourned.